Shin Megami Tensei II is one of the greatest sequels of all time. We're talking about a game that ups the ante on the original in almost every way. And in case you aren't familiar, the first Shin Megami Tensei involved demons overrunning Tokyo, a nuclear apocalypse, and an intense climactic battle, pitting the forces of law and chaos against each other to determine who would rise from the ashes and lead the new world. Needless to say, the stakes were already high, and yet somehow, Atlus managed to push them through the roof, taking us back to the devastated world we left behind for one more adventure to end them all. Our enemies have grown stronger, the conspiracies run deeper, and the choices we'll have to make will have heavier consequences than ever before. Originally released in 1994 for the Super Famicom, Shin Megami Tensei II takes place several decades after the events of the first game, following the story of a young, talented arena fighter who lives in the grand city of Tokyo Millennium, a theocratic society constructed by the zealous Messians after the world became gradually uninhabitable. While this futuristic metropolis may appear utopian from the outside, it doesn't take too long to figure out that something sinister is cooking beneath the surface, something that could threaten not only Earth, but realms beyond. Despite this legendary game later reaching the PlayStation, Game Boy Advance, and even the iPhone, it has never been officially translated or released in the West, which in my opinion borders on being criminal. Sure, this shit would not have flown with Nintendo of America back in the 90s, but to leave such an iconic, mainline Shin Megami Tensei game collecting dust for all these years, you really hate to see it. Now, many dedicated fans have taken it upon themselves to translate this game in Atlus's stead. In fact, the Super Famicom translation by Aeon Genesis came out in May 2004, which was even before Nocturne received a Western release. Since then, others have built onto this patch, enhancing the quality with their own tweaks and modifications. Believe it or not, the version I'll be using in this video was posted in 2023, but even with the incredible amount of effort fans have put into Shin Megami Tensei II, I've found it to be sorely unrecognized online. So what do you say we take a deep dive and see what it has to offer? In this video, I'm going to take you all the way through the Super Famicom release, from the main story to the postgame, covering mechanics, bosses, story, strategies, and more. We're not trying for any specific ending here. What happens is what happens, but we will discuss each possible outcome after all's said and done. To close things out, we'll also be taking a look at each of this game's ports and doing a little comparison to see what they're like. I think you'll find this game to be one unforgettable experience, so let's get to it. Start the game, and we're met with foreboding music as a city pans into view amidst a harsh, rocky landscape. Several decades after Tokyo was destroyed in the first Shin Megami Tensei, humanity continued to pull through, though the remainder of the population was left to endure demon attacks and constant death. As time went on, it became clear that things wouldn't last without some kind of new hope to cling to. A group known as the Messians, who at the climax of the previous game battled fiercely against the chaotic Gaians at the Great Cathedral, were still floating around out there, preaching the arrival of a new savior to guide mankind. If you read the manual, you'll learn that for a time, a free society welcoming both sides existed, presumably created by the previous game's hero. But unfortunately, the Messians were able to gain political power and convert it to a theocracy, silencing those who disagreed with them. The Messians rallied their power, recruiting any who would believe in their message to construct a new city on the ruins of the destroyed cathedral. This city, of course, was Tokyo Millennium. Such a great intro. Short, to the point, and extremely effective at setting your expectations for the bleak tone of this journey. Select New Game, and we find ourselves in the shoes of a man named Hawk, who's currently being chewed out by an older guy named Okamoto for sleeping too much. Okamoto here is our coach, who kindly reminds us that the tournament finals are coming up soon at the Coliseum, and he has no time for our bullshit. He expresses faith in our abilities, saying that ever since he found us in a drunken stupor fighting off a demon, he knew we were a natural. Of course, even naturals need some practice, and Okamoto kinda guilt trips us into it by saying that we couldn't even remember our own name when he took us in, and in fact, we still can't. We're playing an amnesiac protagonist here. Hawk is kinda just what we go by for now, basically our arena stage name, and I guess we kinda owe Okamoto a good match for his kindness. Okamoto hopes to score a victory against a rival coach named Haneda, who trains talented warriors and owns a much nicer gym. And with that, he tells us to get our ass up and start training. You know, I like this guy. That's exactly how I would have said it. So, let's do it. Hop into the virtual trainer, and it's time for a quick tutorial dungeon to get us acquainted with the basic mechanics. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. This is what the virtual trainer looks like? What the hell even is this? Wizardry on the Apple II? Let's just say Okamoto's not the best with money, and we're not exactly working with state-of-the-art equipment here. You'll see what I mean later. As you wander around the simulator, it won't be long at all until you wind up in your first battle. Considering demons are now an everyday occurrence in this world, it makes sense that they just toss us right into the fire. No delivering coffee this time. Although the UI has gotten an upgrade, the battle system is by and large the same as the first game. If you've played just about any Megami Tensei game before, you'll likely feel right at home here, though there are a few important caveats we'll get into. When you encounter an enemy, your options are to fight, talk, try to escape, or set the battle to play out automatically. Choosing fight allows you to select between a melee or ranged attack. Our protagonist here can't learn magic, as is tradition with many of the older games in this franchise. But fortunately, we have access to the comp, a terminal worn on our arm that will soon allow us to negotiate with and summon demons. Something kinda interesting that the game manual establishes is that the interface we see during battle and exploration is literally what the comp displays in-universe. Now compare how this one looks to the first game. That one started off in the 1990s, and it looked more like a command line interface. It's a neat piece of world building that shows you how important these things are. Even though humanity's been spending a lot of time getting its shit kicked in, they still found time to upgrade their tech. Using your comp in battle allows you to summon any allies you've recruited, as well as make use of unlockable features like the Devil Analyze program that allows you to view enemy stats. To round things out, we can use an item, or simply defend for a turn and reduce incoming damage. I think escaping and auto-battling are self-explanatory, so let's just focus on managing demons next, starting with negotiation. Wouldn't be a Shin Megami Tensei game without it. Select Talk, and you're given the choice to take a friendly or threatening attitude towards your enemy. From there, you'll have to do your best to keep the demon under control and coax it into joining you. As always, a little bit of luck plays into what kind of outcome you'll get. You can tilt the odds in your favor by having a high intelligence stat, as well as a healthy supply of items to barter with. Demons love to ask for money, healing supplies, and gemstones. The more of those you have, the less likely it is that you'll piss one off by showing up empty-handed. In my experience, if you can cough up a gemstone for one of these guys, it's a guaranteed success. The trade-off being that gemstones are relatively rare compared to other items. Once you're on friendlier terms with a demon, you can ask it to join your side, hand over some money, or even give you an item. Now, there are some conditions that'll prevent you from recruiting a demon outright. For starters, if a demon is way stronger than you, it's probably not going to join up until you level up. Makes sense. In the top left of the screen, you'll also notice an indicator for the moon phase, another staple of the series. If it's a full moon, the demons are going to be amped the fuck up, and they're not going to want to talk. In addition, the alignment of the demon will have a significant impact on what result you'll get. Our protagonist here can be law, neutral, or chaos aligned, depending on choices made throughout the game. These can range from plot decisions that heavily change the story, to things as minor as what facilities you use to heal your party. If you're deep into the law alignment, a chaos demon is likely not going to join you. In fact, even if you do find a way to get a demon of the opposite alignment on your team, you'll find that it may refuse to fight alongside you in combat anyway. Nice. One more thing you'll want to keep in mind are affinities. Demons can have one of 3 affinities alongside their alignment: light, neutral, and dark. Demons with the dark affinity will never join you through negotiation, and you'll have to rely on fusion to gain access to them. Once you've got a demon on your team, you'll have to spend some money every time you summon them to your active party. With every step you take in a dungeon, your demons will also consume magnetite, basically a secondary currency. Think of it like a fuel source. The more demons you have active, the more magnetite you're gonna lose, so you kinda have to make a judgment call on when would be best to have them out. If you've never played one of these games, I feel like money and magnetite sound like a huge pain in the ass, but it's honestly not bad at all. When you first enter a new stage, try scouting around without any demons active and see what it's like. If you have a hard time, summon 1 or 2 friends, gain a few levels, and you'll be fine, no sweat. Basically, just save your full party setup for bosses, and pay attention to this colored bar here in the middle of your screen. If it's orange, that means random encounters are active for that area. If it's more blue and green, the area is totally safe, and you should return your allies to the comp. Messing around with your comp out of battle allows you to organize your team's formation. This game has a row system again, just like the ones before it. I feel like the UI makes it a little more obvious this time. Your top 3 slots make up the front row, and the bottom 3 are the back row. Your guys up front deal a bit more damage, but seem to get hit more, while those in the back take less damage but appear slightly weaker. Generally speaking, it is smart to keep your healers and support units in the rear line, but I wouldn't say getting your formation right is life or death. It can help you out here and there, but I think you could easily go through the entire game without paying attention to it. Finally, it's worth noting that you can delete demons from your system if necessary. You can't hold an infinite amount of them, though there are a handful of capacity upgrades you'll get as you progress. Alright, I know that was a lot, but don't worry. This is all easy to pick up and comes naturally with playing the game. I honestly think the amount of factors that go into demon management in these older games are really interesting, especially the alignment aspect, which lends itself well to role-playing and immersing yourself into the world. Let's move on to fusion for a minute. As you make your way through new areas, you'll find several locations housing a Jakyo Manor, also known as the Cathedral of Shadows. This is where you can slap 2 or 3 demons together to make a new one. Recruited demons do not level up in this game, so fusing better ones will be your primary method of getting stronger. One neat thing you can do with fusion in this game involves taking demons and combining them with a human, Messian, or Gaian that you've recruited. While demon is used as a catch-all term for your enemies, technically some of them are human, and they actually change how fusion works. See, normally you can't fuse anything that's a higher level than your character, but if you use a human during fusion, you get a random result that ignores the level cap. If you're lucky, you might be able to snag something way stronger than you and absolutely steamroll whatever area you're in. Even if you think that's a cheesy move, I'd still recommend experimenting with it. It can be pretty entertaining just to flip through the results. Shin Megami Tensei II also adds in something called skill inheritance. This became a fixture in later games. Basically, when you fuse demons together, the new one will inherit some of the skills of the old ones. If one of your favorite allies has a skill you make use of all the time, like attack or defense buffs, but they're starting to fall behind in terms of strength, this lets you pass it on to somebody stronger. There are some really powerful abilities where this doesn't work, like some of the extra skills, but in general, it's worth keeping in mind. Then, finally, you have weapon fusions, a returning feature from the first game. Throughout dungeons, you'll find some weapons that can be fused with a demon or another weapon. I will say, I didn't use this much in my own playthrough. If you play well and have a strong party, you won't need this. Although, having a sword that's beefed the fuck out is never a bad thing. And that about does it for demons and fusion. We'll talk about a few more things as we come to them, but this is more than enough to get started. As we get ready to close things out, let's touch on character stats. I brought up intelligence earlier, so we might as well dive into how all that works. Leveling up your character and checking out your stats is actually the point of this tutorial stage. If you fly through the simulator too fast, it's possible to kill the boss, this zombie here, without leveling up, and if that happens, Okamoto makes you run the course again. Starting from the top, we've got strength, intelligence, magic, stamina, speed, and luck. Strength is one you'll definitely want to focus on for the protagonist. Like I said, this guy can't use magic, so you'll want to be effective with your weapons. Strength increases your attack power and accuracy, and also boosts your HP. Intelligence raises your evasion and magic power, and also enhances your conversational prowess. The magic power thing is kinda pointless for us, but like I said, this stat will help out your negotiations, so kick a point towards it every now and then. Magic would raise your MP if you were capable of having any, and naturally also helps out your magic power. Outside of one very specific part of the game, this is the most worthless stat for your character, and we have a long while before we have to worry about it. Moving on, stamina raises your health and defense, and speed increases your accuracy and determines when your character performs their action in combat. Speed is a stat well worth investing in. It's extremely beneficial to act before your enemies when it comes to things like healing or using items. Finally, luck increases your chance of landing a critical hit, your chance to dodge, your chance of surprising the enemy when an encounter starts, and your chance of getting a rare item drop. These are pretty simple stats overall. It's hard to mess up your character unless you do something really stupid like only level magic and luck. Now, to really wrap up this PhD dissertation on game mechanics, I want to bring up a few adjustments, or lack thereof, that the developers made related to game balance. If you ask me, this game's biggest flaw is its combat balancing. So, if you're familiar with the first Shin Megami Tensei, you likely know that you could utterly destroy just about anything in a game with the Zio, or electricity, line of spells. In addition to doing damage, Zio would also stun an enemy for a turn, meaning if you had one of your allies cast it repeatedly, over and over, you could absolutely trivialize otherwise challenging fights. Even fucking Thor, you know, this guy, weak to lightning. You could also kick major ass by equipping charm bullets onto your gun, which made your enemies fall in love with you and kill themselves. Now you'd think they would have avoided that kind of shit in the sequel, right? Well, not quite. They did make the Zio stun far less effective than it was, but where they patched one hole up, they opened up another, and now it feels like guns are better than ever. From a very early point in the story, you have access to some insanely powerful guns that can hit multiple times in the same turn, as well as charm enemies or put them to sleep. Granted, the status effects are harder to trigger against bosses now, but provided they aren't outright immune to bullets, they still do a lot of damage and decimate the random encounters. Here's another thing. There are a good chunk of bosses that really struggle to keep up with you if you have someone cast just a couple of attack or defense buffs. You might say, well, that's the point, right? You overpower the bosses with buffs, but I don't know, something about it this time just feels wrong. Like, literally 2 casts of an attack buff against some of these people, and you might as well be an unstoppable demigod. There's also a really bizarre glitch related to buffing, where if you cast it more than 4 times, the effects can loop around from being absurdly powerful to extremely weak, as if you went off the scale and the game just decided to reset your power to 0. It's weird, and I don't remember that at all in the first game. So, yeah, instead of fixing the old issues, they sorta just changed them. Don't get me wrong, the enemies and bosses are still really neat, and the game does have its challenges that require careful strategy, but it can be very easily exploitable if you know what you're doing. I might even go as far as to say that because of that, this is one of the easier games in the entire franchise. To some, this might not be a flaw at all, so your mileage may vary. Just something to keep in mind. A positive way to look at it is that if you want this game to be a relaxing way to unwind and go on a little power trip, with a bit of setup you can absolutely do that. Alright, Once we've gotten our level up in and Okamoto's satisfied, he hands us $200 and sets us loose into the city, asking that we take our training even further and make use of another virtual battler nearby. Step out of the gym and we find ourselves in a dimly lit hallway. We're currently in one of a handful of residential buildings in the Valhalla district of Tokyo Millennium. You can almost taste the recycled air in this place. It's safe here, but I wouldn't say it looks very comfortable. This building houses a variety of shops and gets you acquainted with the kind of facilities we'll be working with for the rest of the game. Your usual weapons, armor, and item shops return, but if you pay them a visit, you'll find that for now, we're essentially blacklisted from the stores on account of the crippling debt Okamoto's racked up. Remember how I said he was bad with money? Turns out, there's also a casino in this building, and if you try to go inside, Okamoto tears into you for wasting time goofing off. That makes total sense, but it doesn't take a detective to realize that he was already inside the place himself, pissing away all of our money. Classic shit. As nice as the guy is for taking us in, it's clear that as long as we're on his leash, our opportunities in the city are fairly limited. I guess we need to focus on getting that championship belt, but before we hit up the next virtual battler, there are a couple things we can do nearby. If you head south from the door of the gym and take the first door on your right, you'll find a guy loitering in a small room who says that somebody's been around here looking for us. Just as he's about to describe the person to us, the game cuts to a laboratory of some sort as a suited man stands in front of a test tube with a nondescript figure inside. The man says, among all of you, he has the greatest power, and commands us to give him a name. This is the first of a handful of scenes where we name the main characters of the story. And believe it or not, what you do in these actually has a fairly significant gameplay impact. I didn't realize it during this first one, but you can actually refuse the command and the game just rolls with it, providing a canon name instead of one that you input. The catch is, if you relinquish the freedom given to you to decide on a name, you end up tilted towards the law alignment less than 15 minutes into the game. This is a brilliant gimmick. Think about it. In the first Shin Megami Tensei, things start off in a free and balanced human society. Your supporting characters are essentially just archetypes meant to represent each alignment. Naming them has no effect, and they have no preset name to fall back on. Then you have this game, Tokyo Millennium, a society ruled by zealots who desire control above all else. In a world that's become so out of balance, even a decision as simple as this has a harsh consequence, and giving up that one bit of personal expression you're afforded actually changes your character. To take something as mundane and obligatory as naming the cast and giving it an actual narrative effect is just cool as hell. Now, in the opening few minutes of my playthrough, I was not thinking about it that hard. I figured if I refuse to give him a name, the dialogue is just gonna loop around, and eventually I'll have to do it anyway. So I did name this guy. And what did I call him? Well, don't be mad, but I named him Rupert. Now hold on, I wasn't even trying to be that funny. You're handing me a total blank slate of a person here. All we know is that he's strong, and I thought I had to name him. To me, Rupert sounded kinda rugged and cool. I don't fucking know. Look, I did my best. Later, I learned that his true name is Zion, named after the 7th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. If you know me, you'll know normally I don't care at all about canon names, but since this was kinda unique, I did consider restarting the game to adjust it. But I changed my mind. Like I said at the beginning of this video, we're gonna go with whatever happens in this playthrough. So we'll call him Zion and just pretend Rupert's his nickname. Whatever you do here, after you make your choice, we're back in the room next to the gym. I guess Zion's trying to track us down, but we don't really get any info on what he looks like or where he is. I'm sure we'll run into him sooner or later. Another thing we can do around here, a bit more lighthearted this time, is take a peek inside the disco club. Okamoto's too busy gambling to notice us slip into this one. And dancing is free, baby, so our debt means nothing here. Everyone's dancing furiously, and what's funny is that message pops up a lot, like nearly every step you take. If you use your imagination a little, you can kind of picture yourself making your way through this packed club, navigating through a maze of people living in their own world. You can even run into a demon dancing near the back, which is kind of crazy. Everybody in here must be tripping balls to not notice. In one of the rooms off to the side, you'll find this guy Tony, who lets you change the music the club plays. This is pretty much a little sound test for you to mess around with the game's different tracks. It's a pretty cool feature to hide back here. Aside from that, these clubs are a decent place to pick up gossip, some of which, as you'll see later, ends up being extremely important. Slipping past random citizens and wandering messiahs in the hallways, you can also track down a bar, where you can collect more information from the patrons, as well as purchase drinks that boost your stats until the next full moon. One sharp-dressed man tells us that the streets predict we will lose our upcoming battle against our opponent, known as Red Bear. Aside from champion status, if we win this fight, we'll also gain the right to be a citizen of the luxurious Center District, so this is a really big deal. Very close to the bar, there's an appraisal shop that provides explanatory info on your items, and finally, near the north end of the building, a fortune teller. I find it kinda interesting that a fortune teller is permitted to exist within this society. Seems like something they'd do away with. Her function is to give you general advice if you get stuck. If you're ever unsure about where to go next, you can't go wrong by seeking one of these places out. The fortune teller says that she sees a woman's name deep within our soul, explaining that she's very important to us. This time, when prompted for a name, I opted to actually see what would happen if I refused, and what do you know, we're told her name is Hiroko. Cool, but just like with Zion, that's about all we know, aside from the fact that her fate is tied to ours. Welp, that's probably enough screwing around for now. To get on with our training, we just have to stop by the virtual battler, a few doors down from the gym. The battler here is open to the public, and offers 4 different stages, each one more difficult than the last. The graphics also get a significant upgrade over Okamoto's system. There's several of these all across the game. The way I see it, these virtual battlers are kinda like Planet Fitness in this world, whereas earlier, we were working out of a shitty home gym. They're a good place to get some extra levels in, practice against some new enemies, and most importantly, upgrade your comp. Check it out. Buy a ticket for level 1, and as soon as the stage starts, you see a guy in a wheelchair cross your path up ahead. Track him down, and holy shit, it's Steven, returning from the first game all these years later. Steven is the inventor of the demon summoning program, which gave humanity a fighting chance during the apocalypse. And he passes the program on to us, warning us of an incident that will soon cause the city to be overrun with demons. This officially lets us get started with demon recruiting, fusion, and so forth. Steven believes the only shot of stopping the upcoming threat is to distribute the program to anyone who appears capable of using it, and tells us to use it wisely, expressing his hope to meet us again sometime soon here in the virtual battler. It seems like he's now confined to exist in virtual spaces, perhaps as a result of his aging. I mean, how old even is this guy by now, like 180? Anyway, make it a habit to check every new virtual battler you come across. As you pass through key moments of the story, Steven will continue to appear and give you more upgrades. Funnily enough, that actually concludes the stage, meaning we still didn't do any training. Jump back into level 1, and you're not gonna believe it, but something else interrupts our session. If it were me, I'd probably just go home and go to bed at this point. Now, we hear a disembodied voice, and then it's back to the suited man in the test chamber. He asks us to assign a name to someone described as exceptionally intelligent. Refuse, and we're told his name is Gimel, continuing the theme of Hebrew letters. As things fade back to the simulator, Gimel actually speaks to us, telling us that he's in a place called Arcadia. Kinda creepy. And now, we can finally train. With a couple levels under your belt, you should be able to complete every stage, though it isn't actually required. Have some fun, mess around, and when you're ready, head back to Okamoto's gym. Tomorrow's the big day. It all rides on this. Get some rest for the night, save your game, and the following morning, it's showtime. Okamoto tells us the Coliseum is to the north of Haneda's gym, and away we go. Leave the building, and the district of Valhalla stretches before us. As you wrap around skyscrapers and weave between buildings, you may encounter some demons like this pixie. These are basically free recruits to get you started. Definitely talk to them because they will come in handy for the upcoming fight. Haneda's gym isn't far from where we emerge, and yeah, much better than ours. This entire building is the gym, whereas ours is one room tucked away in a cluster of shops and other services. Apparently, it's the biggest in Valhalla and has produced several champions. You're even free to use their virtual battler and talk to Haneda himself, which feels kinda like a betrayal to Okamoto if I'm being honest. Haneda even offers us a spot at his gym and says we're cute, but I think it's a little too late to switch sides like that. Nothing comes of it anyway. Further to the east is a church where you can save your game at a terminal and have a priest heal your party. Later on, when you discover other terminals, you'll be able to warp back to this one, which is pretty nice. There's also an entrance to an underground tunnel that leads to the center, but they're not going to let us pass unless we win that tournament or have some other official business there. Heading north towards the Coliseum, you'll notice a huge screen that constantly broadcasts the news to anyone in the area. A reporter from MNN, the Millennium News Network, spits out church propaganda at all hours of the day, with great stories like a poor worker donating his entire life savings to the church, and the execution of heretics. I'm guessing their reporting is likely a little biased. Anyway, head on inside the Coliseum and be sure to take a look at the Hall of Fame before you start your match. Alongside statues of several other legendary fighters, way at the back of the display, you'll find none other than the protagonist of the first game, known simply as the hero. This blew me away when I saw it, I just didn't really expect it. Apparently, he was the first champion, and his trademark, of course, was fighting alongside demons. Well damn, long time no see. When you're ready to get started, one of the match organizers tells us not to let the fight end too quickly because the audience will get mega pissed and start rioting. Okay, geez, no pressure. He then explains that this fight will be a dungeon match. They built a maze in the arena, littered it with demons and items, and they're about to set us loose in there to meet Red Bear in the middle and give the city the fight of a lifetime. Okamoto tells us to come back in one piece, and the match begins. This is like some battle royale shit. Explore the maze thoroughly because you can pick up a handful of pieces of equipment that'll help you out. It's a pretty small stage overall, hard to get lost, but if you do, don't forget to check your map and fill out all the squares to find everything. When you reach the middle of the maze, Red Bear is already waiting, and yet again, we cut to the lab. This time, we're asked to assign a name to someone who not only resembles us, but has nearly identical power as well. After refusing, we're told his name is Daleth. When we jump back to Red Bear, he's getting pissed off because we're over here staring into space while he's talking. He applauds us for making it this far, then taunts us by saying he's already mourning our upcoming death. We'll see about that. As important as this fight is, it's not overly difficult. After all, we've kinda just started the game, so our options for team building are pretty limited. Any demons you can scrape together will help out here, even if the only purpose they serve is to take hits for you and then immediately die. This is a short battle, so every turn counts. Having some meat shields will help you stay in longer. There's a weapon you can find called a bollock knife that hits 2 times per turn, and that really comes in handy here. What's kind of funny about this knife is that it is in fact named after its hilt resembling male testicles. We don't really say bollocks here in the US, so I'm gonna call it the ballsack knife. Anyway, after a few good swings, Red Bear falls. He did score a critical hit on me, which did a lot of damage, but it was far too late for him to turn the battle around. As he dies, he laments never being able to be the champion and live in the center, but hey, we both knew we could die coming into this, so it is what it is, right? The announcer declares us the new champion, the crowd roars, and the scene fades to black, picking back up in the gym, but not that old ratty-ass gym we were in before. Okamoto now controls Hanada's place, and of course, we can now freely visit the center. Okamoto says that if we keep winning matches, we'll both be rich, and eventually earn a meeting with Madam, the ruler of the Valhalla district. As Okamoto continues to gloat, suddenly a mysterious woman bursts into the room, asking to meet the new champion. This is Hiroko, and she's actually come here from the center to enlist our help. Apparently, around 6 months ago, there was an explosion in the center, and in the resulting chaos, a young boy disappeared. Hiroko says this explosion was no accident, but actually an intentional act of sabotage by 2 scientists named Mikata and Hanada, who also went missing. Hiroko tells us that apparently Hanada is now hiding out in Madam's mansion, and the only way she can get to him is if we bring her along as a guest. Pretty sneaky, but I agreed to it because why not? Okamoto briefly objects to the idea, arguing that we're too busy for this, but then relents, and Hiroko joins up with us. Nice. Didn't even have to find her ourselves. To make things even more convenient, right after this conversation, a messenger formally invites us to meet Madam whenever we'd like. This plan is really falling into place, and I'm just standing here. Well, I guess we'd better head on over. Hiroko, as you might expect, gives us access to magic, with a nice variety of spells for damage, healing, and dungeon crawling. If you cast the Mapper spell, it gives you a nice little mini-map overlay so you don't have to keep manually going to the map screen. Pretty cool stuff. With the coach off our back, we have a lot more freedom. If you want to make some stops before visiting Madam, the shops will actually acknowledge your existence now, and you can even gamble if you want. The casino prizes can prove extremely useful if you want solid equipment early. If you're lucky, that is. I made some use of this in Kyu-Yaku Megami Tensei, and even Shin Megami Tensei If. Most of the casino games kinda suck, but I always love playing big and small, as well as Kino. I'd stay away from the slots personally, I never get shit from these. If you revisit the gym we occupied just this morning, you'll find old Hanada, whose business is basically ruined. Maybe we should just leave. You can get to Madam's mansion by heading past the church and then below this bridge that leads to the slums. Pretty huge place, gotta admit. As you approach the front door, the guards let you inside, and then we're asked to name another character, this time female. The suited man's tone seems different as he somewhat hesitantly states that she's ours. Refuse to assign a name, and we're told it's Beth. As the vision fades, we're met by Alfred, the butler. Seriously? Alfred the butler. I would honestly shit my pants if Batman popped out, but no such luck. Alfred introduces us to Madam, and then the curtain rises before us to reveal her face on a screen. Madam says that the leaders of the center have left Valhalla here in her care, going on to explain that people flock to this place specifically for the Colosseum and casino. She's essentially carved out her own portion of the city that appeals to earthly pleasures, whereas the other districts are way more strict and morally upstanding. Apparently, her style of ruling has created a peaceful environment, and she's very proud of it, describing Valhalla as an ideal place to live. Madam tells us that the center intends to clean things up around here, but that she intends to leave the district the way it is. To assist her in her goals, Madam wants us to track down, you guessed it, Hanada, the guy Hiroko's looking for. It'd be too easy if he was just right here waiting for us. While Hanada used to work here at the mansion as a scientist, he ran away to open a portal to the abyss and summon hordes of demons. That kinda escalated fast. Madam tells us that he should be hiding out somewhere in the slums and lends us a demon, Cerberus, to assist us with the job. While it's never outright stated in this version of the game, this is actually the very same Cerberus from the first Shin Megami Tensei, which is honestly one of the coolest things I've ever seen. As you'd expect, Cerberus far outclasses our abilities and is extremely powerful at this point in the game. And so, with an old friend back by our side, our journey to track down Hinata continues. Like I mentioned earlier, the slums are across the huge bridge looming near the mansion. The encounter rate spikes as you make your way over here, and the place is in an advanced state of disrepair. What you're looking for is a hidden building. What you have to do is hug the walls of the structures until you see the entrance revealed, all the while getting attacked by dogs and crash test dummies. The encounters continue inside. There are even zombies in here. As you explore, it becomes clear that this place is where some of the last vestiges of the Gaians make their home. As we saw on the news, these people are at constant risk of execution if their activities are discovered. Most of them are friendly enough though. If you're unfamiliar, the Gaians are essentially the exact opposite of a Messian. Which is to say, they're not placing their trust in the Judeo-Christian God, instead opting for other ancient deities and a more chaotic life. You can pick up some pretty strange rumors from the Gaians that you won't hear anywhere else. Whispers of the abyss and other forbidden knowledge. Like this woman who tells us that the money used in Millennium is actually produced by a being known as Lucifuge, who reports directly to Lucifer himself. This building is also the location of a Cathedral of Shadows. Demon fusion isn't exactly a government-sanctioned activity, so for as long as we're in Millennium, they're gonna be kinda out of the way. If you went ahead and allowed the game to choose the canon character names for you, you'll be far enough to the law side that the Gaian healer won't take very kindly towards you, calling you a wicked minion of God. You can still heal here if you want, but you have to cough up a donation first. Alternatively, you can seek out the Garage. This is a neutral aligned healing spot, and they're a bit more accepting of your alignment. When you're ready to find Hinata, make sure you have Cerberus out, and when you're close, he'll actually be able to smell him and provide directions. We end up walking in on the guy as he's setting up a ritual to open up an abyss portal. He refers to himself as a master genius and warns us to stay away, calling Madam an old fart as he refuses to return with us. Apparently, nobody will accept the kind of research he wants to do. I wonder why. Hinata then arranges a series of dolls on pedestals behind him, and sure enough, a portal opens. But then, he's promptly murdered by the demon Mercurius. Typical shit, man, I swear. With Cerberus's help, Mercurius goes down disgustingly easily. I feel like they should have accounted for that and boosted his stats up a little bit. In only 2 turns, Mercurius falls and fades away, and we're left alone with the portal in front of us. The group decides to scoop up the dolls and bring them along. I probably would have thrown them in a fire or something, but that's just me. With Hinata unfortunately out of the picture permanently, it looks like we have no choice but to report back on the results of our mission. You'll notice outside that things are a bit more dangerous now. Far more encounters than before, and with creatures who are far more bizarre. I guess that's how it goes when you play around with portals to the abyss. Fight your way back to the mansion, and sadly, Cerberus decides to leave the party and resume his duties with Madam. He does compliment our skills though, and hopes to see us again sometime soon. What a cool guy. Madam is disappointed that we couldn't bring back Hinata alive, but thanks us for our help anyway. Then, she introduces us to a messenger from the center. The man calls upon us to remember our true name, and we're brought to the final naming sequence, where this time, we're the one inside the tube. As we awaken, the suited man says that the choice to serve God or be an agent to the demons is ours, and describes the situation as a great gamble, which will determine the fate of humanity. He commands us to identify ourselves, and believe it or not, you can still refuse. It's kinda rare in these early games that you can explicitly choose a canon name, and it doesn't come from some kind of supplementary material, like an audio drama that nobody's ever listened to before. It was tempting to call myself Marsh, but since that's what I called the main character of the first game, I think we should go with whatever they throw at us. So, refuse the command, and we're told our name is Aleph. Aside from Hiroko, that means every nameable character in this game is named after something from the Hebrew alphabet. The letter Aleph is said to represent the oneness of God, and as I understand it, the letter by itself is silent. Considering we play a silent protagonist, that's a pretty clever name. I like it. Cutting back to the mansion, we lose the name Hawk and henceforth are known to all as Aleph. The messenger asks if things are starting to come back to us, and then tells us his name is Zion, or Rupert. Zion tells us he's actually been looking for us for a long time. He says that even though we may not remember it, we actually used to live in the center. Then he quickly turns to Hiroko and says that she's been ordered to return to the center. And with that, Zion escorts the two of us out of the mansion, as Madam realizes that all of our hard-fought battles in the Colosseum to earn a ticket out of Valhalla were pretty much pointless. Things pick back up in a dark control room as we're greeted by the center bishop, who hands us an ID card which grants us resident status. The bishop then tears into Hiroko, admonishing her for abandoning her duties as a temple knight. As it turns out, Hiroko wasn't looking for us on official orders. She left her post without permission, which is pretty serious. The bishop calls in security to take Hiroko away as she thanks us for our support. We never did find that missing boy or the Mikata guy she was looking for, but we gave it our best shot. Now speaking of Mikata, once Hiroko was gone, the bishop informs us that he's the one who erased our memories. As a result, we have no recollection of the, quote, divine mission bestowed upon us. Rather bluntly, the bishop says that we are to become the savior of Millennium. Our birth was the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy foretold by John in the Book of Revelation, and we are destined to be the Messiah. Whoa, now hold on. That's some crazy shit. Us? We were fighting demons in the street, drunk off our ass. Granted, our memories were wiped, but still. The bishop goes on to explain that Millennium was built over the ruins of a city called Tokyo, and that its entire purpose is to bring about the 1,000-year kingdom, an era of complete peace and harmony. Millennium needs a strong messiah figure for this all to work out, and so here we are, supposedly straight from God himself. Now, while God may be omnipotent and all-powerful, he apparently could not create a male protagonist capable of using magic. We're still gonna need someone to help us out through the game. And so, the bishop calls in our government-mandated wife, Beth. Beth is so nice it'll make you sick, and she says she feels sorry for our memories being wiped, but from now on, she's here with us forever. That's real cool, thanks. Well, with all of the formalities taken care of, it's time to get down to business. Another district of the city called Holy Town has been frozen by a demon known as King Frost. On top of that, there's another demon, Basilisk, roaming around spewing poison. As the Messiah, you could say it falls on us to put a stop to that shit show and restore order. It's kinda in the job description. The bishop tells us to head to the western exit of the center, and provides us a passcode to get through a security door. After that, we get dumped on our ass out in the hallway. What just happened? My first thought standing outside the control room was that maybe I could set Beth free. I mean, come on, it's clear she's doing this against her will, right? I was hoping you could tell her to, blink if she was being held captive, but she stayed. Clearly, the brainwashing must be too powerful. Well, this is our first opportunity to explore the center, so we might as well take a look around. If Holy Town's already frozen, then fuck it, what's another 5 minutes gonna do? As you might imagine, this is a sprawling place. There are multiple floors, shops, and rooms with NPCs you can talk to. Though oddly, as big as the center is, it feels eerily empty. From a narrative standpoint, this does make sense. Earning the right to live here is notoriously difficult, so what you have is this lavish setup populated exclusively by powerful warriors and people who are maybe a little bit too faithful. If you explore around, you can actually find Hiroko's parents, who are really upset that their daughter would leave without permission. They're kinda creepy, I'm not gonna lie. If you hit up the virtual trainer on the main floor, you can also get the Devil Analyzer from Steven, who doesn't have much to say otherwise. Surprisingly, there's even a bar in here. This makes no sense to me. Look, I don't give a shit if people drink, but you'd think having a fully stocked bar in a place like this would be grounds for severe punishment. I decided to imagine that everyone in here was allowed 2 drinks per day, and then they got cut off. Even a temple knight needs to kick back sometimes, right? One guy in here claims to remember us from whenever we used to live here, and tells us another passcode that can be used to reach an otherwise inaccessible location on an upstairs floor. You'd better be writing these fucking things down on a piece of paper, by the way, because they just keep coming. Another guy tells us where we can go to reach each district of the city. To the north, we can access a tunnel that brings us back to Valhalla. To the east, we can visit Arcadia. To the west, we can get to Holy Town. And to the south, a place called the Factory. Interesting. Before heading out, if you opt to use that code and go up to floor 21, you'll find a research lab that lets you preview different weapons you can acquire throughout the game. They don't actually give you anything, you can just look. If you really want to buy something, there's another lab that gives you access to an inventory of general supplies, but that's no fun, man. I don't want a bottle of pills, I want that damn railgun. Whatever. I guess we'd better get started before the bishop beats our ass. Head outside, and then over to the west. As you pass through these tunnels, strangely, you can find our old friend Mr. Nandi, here from India, who wants to play this goofy-ass game called Codebreaker, where you have to guess a number. You need an item called a metal card to play this, and you'll pick these up every so often in chests. It can be a good way to earn some free items, but my question is, why is this even down here? This dude loves Codebreaker so much that he'd operate an underground facility like 30 feet away from the most fortified settlement on the planet? Mr. Nandi, I just don't think it's worth it. When you reach the end of the tunnel, you'll have to put in the password. Like I said, hope you wrote it down, otherwise you'll have to walk back to the bishop and try to play it cool while you explain that you forgot 4 numbers. The code's 0352, by the way. And here we are, Holy Town, covered in ice. Guess you could say heaven froze over. God. So, we know our targets are King Frost and Basilisk. Let me show you how to kill Basilisk first. You can encounter him randomly near this little thin street over here. Just walk around and eventually he will pop up. For me, he appeared instantaneously and the battle started, but that's not always how it goes. See, sometimes when you find him, he'll run away or poison you, and it can be pretty irritating because you just want to get it over with. Fortunately, I lucked out, and it was simple. Basilisk can use ice attacks, he can turn you to stone, and as I just mentioned, he can poison you. You might want to recruit some help for this fight, though it is completely possible to do it by yourself. Beth's healing magic will be your lifeline here, so just alternate between swinging and healing for a while, and this guy will go down. Having a way to cure poison is pretty important too, in case he decides to toy with you. Bring along a handful of curatives from the shops, and you should be fine. For King Frost, we have to do a little bit of dungeon crawling. If you continue past the street where we fought Basilisk, you'll find stalkers exploring the place. These aren't the kind of stalkers that'll follow you home. We're talking about the Russian guys, like in Shadow of Chernobyl. Later on, after this place thaws, we'll be able to access the buildings up here too, but for now, we need to head back to the tunnels and enter the building nearby. Something kind of funny that happened on the walk back was an encounter with this demon, Frankie. This is Frankenstein's monster, obviously. I just think the sheer concept is hilarious. This guy, here in Tokyo Millennium, walking around in this frozen hellhole, I had to recruit him, and he quickly became a favorite. He's not even that good, he's just Frankie. Alright, so head inside the building and take the elevator up to the bridge. The demons love to spawn on this bridge, so get ready for that. Wrap all the way around, take the next elevator back down, then keep following the windy path deeper into the city. Before long, you'll come up on the Great Church. I kinda think of this as the symbol of Holy Town, even though it's buried all the way in here. As you'll see when you step inside, King Frost has converted the church into a walk-in freezer, and a thick fog envelops the entire place. Dangerous though it may be, the stalkers have made their way in here as well, and even set up their own healing station. Overall, it's a pretty short path to King Frost. The church itself is huge, but for now, the action only takes place on the first floor. You might even walk into his room by mistake. This guy requires slightly more strategy. My biggest recommendation is to have Jack Frost for this fight. Jack Frost is completely immune to ice attacks, and the king here loves to use them, which means you essentially have an invincible party member half the time. Jack Frost also has the spell Rakukaja, which buffs your defense. Cast that shit 2 or 3 times, and then just sit back and focus on attacking and healing. In the front row, me and my boy Frankie were busting it down Holy Town style, absolutely beating King Frost's frozen ass cheeks. Frankie did eventually get taken out, but by then, it was too late. King Frost had fallen too far behind, and we won the battle. Not bad work for our first real mission. Before we report back, what do you say we check out the rest of the church? Now that the ice is starting to fade away, there are a few more things we can do here. First, you can actually find another altar designed to open a portal to the abyss. If you use the dolls that belong to Hanada, the portal does open for a second and spits out a slime, but that's it. It seems like Hanada had the wrong idea with these things. The portals open only briefly and don't actually let you travel inside. Regardless, we still keep them for some reason. In another room, all the way up on the 3rd floor, you can find a stalker who tells you about a decapitated head that he picked up. That's all he says. You'll want to take note of this. It has a very important purpose down the line. Let's just say we don't know whose head it is yet. Last up, you'll find a path being blocked by yet another stalker. He won't let you through, but it's worth remembering that at some point, we'll have to come back here. Outside, you'll see the place has started to return to normal. They're even talking about us on the news now that the screens work again. In the previously sealed off buildings, you can access the usual shops too, although they're empty for the time being, except for the Cathedral of Shadows. Surprisingly, there's a casino and another disco club too. You can find this out by talking to NPCs scattered around, but essentially, Holy Town is one of the least popular places to live in the city. The center envisioned it as this ultimate place to worship and do church activities, but nobody really liked that when you could just live in Valhalla and watch Colosseum fights instead. Seeing as how there are clubs, gambling, and demon fusion here, you get the idea that this place has almost been forsaken by the authorities, and the earthly pleasures have started to take over. Back at the center, the bishop congratulates us on a job well done, and tells us that we need to figure out where Mikata is hiding next. As he goes on and on about how dangerous Mikata is, suddenly a priest interrupts us and whispers something to the bishop. His tone then changes, and so does our mission. It seems the factory district has been overtaken by the demon Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice has halted production, and on top of that, a herd of angry cattle are going on a rampage as a result of his demonic influence. The bishop stresses how important the factory is to the city and urges us to get moving and save the workers. Don't worry, man, I'm on top of this shit. This time we take the southern tunnel. As you head on over, you might notice the city now suffers from earthquakes on occasion. These are pretty strange and don't really do anything, but it makes you wonder what could be causing it. Majin Tensei actually did this for a while too. Reach the end of the tunnel and we've got another password. This one is 6191. Step out and, ladies and gentlemen, we are officially in the shits. The factory is all kinds of fucked up. This is an entire district of the city where people are way too excited about performing physical labor. Gotta love that brainwash. There are destroyed buildings and deep pits all around, and the place is just bleak. This district supports all of the others, and basically represents the dirty price that must be paid for the center to have such a high quality of life. The encounters here kinda make you feel bad too. Let's start with the cattle. The bishop and everyone else refer to them as demi-nandi. They're demonic cows used to produce food in mass quantities. But think about it. They're called nandi. That's a Hindu term, and what do a lot of Hindus not do? Well, eat cow. I think it's a pretty deliberate way of showing that the Messians absolutely do not respect other beliefs, and treat what could be seen as a sacred symbol as something cheap and disposable. I wonder what Mr. Nandi would have to say about all this. And these other guys, I mean, do I even have to say anything? They're homicidally insane slaves. Your first order of business here should be to stop the stampedes. You can do this by heading over to this animal enclosure, where the creatures return and start causing trouble. Beat up one really strong cow, and the rest disperse, solving the problem entirely. Honestly, that was a lot easier than I expected. There's really nothing to it. Just like our old friends Basilisk and King Frost, however, our second opponent is gonna take more work. There are some safe spots around the factory if you need a break. You can't go into this massive fortified base just yet, but you do have access to a healer, a terminal, a bar, and some shops. The weapons shop is well worth a visit. Remember when I said earlier that you could get your hands on some really powerful guns early on in the game? Well, this is it. This guy will sell you an M16 rifle. This thing is so good, it's disgusting. Seriously, buy one of these, combine it with the Randy shot ammunition or the nerve bullets, and you've just turned most of the random encounters into Swiss cheese. The M16 can be equipped by you and Beth, and it gives you multiple attacks in the same turn. They try to balance the status effects bullets a little bit, because only Beth can use them, but it doesn't work. It is very unbalanced. Randy shot inflicts charm onto your enemies. Apparently, Randy can mean horny. It's some shit people in the UK made up. Hit an enemy with these, and if the effect works, they'll attack themselves, or at the very least, waste their turn. The nerve bullets inflict sleep. Take your pick, it doesn't matter which one, and watch as you proceed to kick Demon Dick for a really long time. If you only have enough money for one M16, that's fine. You only need one. 2 is kinda overkill if you ask me. And you know what? Some of you probably think I'm gassing these bullets up way too much. Like, surely it's not that good, right? Well, let me show you. We're gonna fight Beetlejuice and play really fucking sloppy, and you'll see just how hard it carries me. When you're ready to go, head to this little building next to the animal pens. From here, we're gonna be working our way down, deeper and deeper into the factory, until we find the boss. Notice as I come in here, Beth is silenced. That means she can't use magic at all, so my only form of healing is gonna have to be items that I picked up. I could just walk right back out and heal her, but we're doing this to prove a point. The first floor of the dungeon isn't bad. You do have to deal with dark rooms where you can't see anything, but if you use your map, you shouldn't have any problems with making it through. Pretty soon you'll pop out onto a ledge and move on to the next stretch of the dungeon. In here, it's more of the same. Navigate the dark rooms, fight the enemies, move on. At the next stop, you'll want to make note of a structure guarded by temple knights, currently off limits. After this, you've got the final leg of the dungeon. Down here, in the lowest reaches of the factory, as I was feeling my way around this pitch dark room, I found myself suddenly face to face with one of the strangest enemies in the game, Chris the Car. Chris here is a reference to the movie Christine, based on a Stephen King story about what else but a killer car. I just want you to picture this situation for a second. You can't see a damn thing. You're in this cold metal corridor, and a car comes down the hallway and tries to murder you. And how do you deal with that? Well, have your government wife fire an M16 at it and put it to sleep. What is going on in this game? When you've reached this point, Beetlejuice is close. He's lurking around in one of these dark sections, and when you finally find him, it's sort of like a jump scare. This freaky ass thing just pops out and chatters its teeth at you. I was half expecting to run into Michael Keaton down here. Now look, I don't have any demons that can heal. I just brought in Frankie for moral support. That's it. And on top of that, Beth doesn't even have full health. In fact, it's getting pretty low. But with this gun, we wipe the floor with him. It's dead simple, and over in an instant. If that doesn't convince you, I don't know what will. That's a whole dungeon with several enemy encounters and a boss. No healing, just shooting. Crazy stuff, to say the least. When Beetlejuice goes down, a man thanks us for getting rid of him and seems pretty excited to get back to work. If you leave this room and go back inside, which I actually did by mistake, he'll also mention that he recently dug up an artifact called the Jupiter Pillar. Ugh, I see what they're gonna do. So get this. To finish this game, you have to collect 7 different pillars scattered around the world. This is your first hint towards that. Now, where have I heard that before? Oh yeah, Megami Tensei II. If you're not familiar with this franchise, that is probably so confusing, but there's another game with the very same gimmick. Digital Devil Story, Megami Tensei II, where in order to beat the game, you need to collect pillars. This is probably the reason I get comments every once in a while saying that I've already played Shin Megami Tensei II. Finding all of the pillars in Megami Tensei II was pretty obtuse. This time around it's not as bad, but you have to be interacting with every NPC you can find, and taking notes of anything that seems important. That being said, keep this spot in mind for later. Returning to the center, we're met by Zion instead of the bishop, who applauds us for saving so many people across the city. Zion thinks now would be a good time to show us the Arcadia area, and tells us to head over to the eastern exit. Apparently, the place is something like a testing ground for the Thousand-Year Kingdom, an experimental district designed to be an ideal world in itself. Zion says we'll meet Gimmel there, who may restore some of our memories. The code to access Arcadia is 9103. As you pass through, rather than emerging in a new area of the city, you're simply met with a terminal that brings you there. So, is it teleporting us there, or is this place entirely virtual reality? Whatever the case may be, it's honestly beautiful and almost otherworldly. Trees and water are abundant here, and the people make their homes in luxurious mansions. One of the first people I ran into was King Muscle, one of the old Colosseum champions. This guy's a complete dickhead and is absolutely full of himself. The other residents are a bit more modest, but many of them are downright obsessed with how wonderful the place is, and practically worship Gimmel. It's a little unnerving, but it truly does look like an almost perfect place to live, so maybe you could say it's hard to blame them? I only say almost perfect because there's still a big screen in here that broadcasts the news all day. Imagine if you went to heaven and they just had a huge ass TV playing CNN constantly. Isn't the point of this utopia to be detached from that kind of shit? I'd rather just go to hell. As one guy puts it, chilling out in his mansion, the only problem the citizens of Arcadia have to face is death. While they have perfect lives, at the end of the day, these people are still mortal. Some still aren't satisfied with what they have and wish to live forever. Even in a place like this, you just can't please everyone. Let's pay Gimmel a visit. If you just walk around the main area, you're not going to find him. He lives alone in a hidden mansion, accessible by going through the secret path here through the trees. As we step in, he offers us a warm welcome. Gimmel says that after we had our memories wiped and went missing, he was put in charge of Arcadia and told to build it into a model utopia. He describes his project as a great success, even saying that interpersonal conflict between citizens no longer exists. Gimmel hopes that one day the entire world will be like this, and that on that day, he can finally say the Thousand-Year Kingdom has arrived. Gimmel says that we're welcome to return at any time, and suggests we return to Zion and update the center on the project's continued success. Well, we certainly didn't get our memories back, but what Gimmel says definitely gives you something to chew on. Gimel believes that when the Center has created this utopia across the planet, the 1,000-year kingdom will have arrived. Now, when I was really young, I went to church a good bit with my grandparents, and believe me, the old congregation loved to talk about things like heaven and God's kingdom. None of those conversations ever involved a human society creating everlasting peace on their own. It was something that God would have to do. This little trial run kingdom they've made looks great, sure, but at the end of the day, it was forced into creation by people. And judging by the way so many people sit around worshipping Gimel, it's evident that whether he realizes it or not, he's playing God here. I think some bad shit's gonna happen. Mark my words. When we arrive back at the Center, you're gonna notice something's wrong. Yeah, check it out. The encounter bar. There are demons here now. All that work we put in, and they still managed to get in somehow. Well, shit. There are now plenty of encounters in the area, including a human Beetlejuice. So they really did put Michael Keaton in this game. Fight your way to the control room, and you'll come across Zion, who says that all hell's broken loose and then runs off. The bishop tells us that the demons have finally broken in, and on top of that, a figure known as the Anti-Messiah has arrived. Oh boy, here we go. The bishop says the Anti-Messiah has been going around performing acts of heroism to convince everyone that he is the true Messiah. He's been spotted in Holy Town and Valhalla, but currently nobody knows his exact location, and that falls on us. This guy's not even necessarily evil, he's doing good things, but claiming to be the Messiah is causing a lot of problems for the Center, so there's no arguing it. I guess we have to go track him down. I opted to check out Holy Town first. It becomes apparent very fast that he's not here, but we do learn that this anti-Messiah is none other than Daleth, the test tube guy who was described as being a lot like us. A lot of people are already buying into his claims, so he must be pretty good. But here's the real main attraction in Holy Town. Stop by the bar, and you'll run into none other than Lucifer. And I'm dead serious. This isn't even a required scene, you can totally miss it, but Lucifer is just right here, in this bar, in disguise, of course. He tells us his name is Louis Cypher, which still makes me roll my eyes, and goes on to say that he's heard a lot about our exploits across the city. He says that he wanted to check out Tokyo Millennium and see what the Messians were up to, and complains about how strict security is around here. And that's all he says. That shit is so ominous. He's just been lurking, keeping an eye on things. Running into Lucifer at this bar is like running into Bill Gates at Wingstop. It just rubs you the wrong way. Welp, anyway, if Daleth isn't here, then he must be in Valhalla. Head back to our old stomping grounds, and if you check out the news screen, you'll see a report talking about Daleth's heroic efforts. The reporter says that Daleth is currently at the Colosseum, and he's waiting for us to arrive so he can prove his abilities in front of a massive crowd. So that's the angle he wants to take. Dethrone the arena champion. Well, you know what? A man can leave the arena, but the arena never leaves a man. Lord forgive me, but I'm back on my old shit. It's time for this champion to defend his title. You might consider making a few preparations before the fight. Stock up on any supplies you'll need, maybe fuse a new demon, and be sure to check in on Okamoto, who's shocked we're doing this and seems disappointed that we didn't include him. Listen, it wasn't exactly my choice. It's not my fault the fucking Antichrist wants to settle things with a televised sports event. As you enter the arena, you can witness a rather bizarre scene if you walk through the Hall of Fame again. This time, when you reach the hero statue, you'll see tears flowing from its eyes. I found the mental image of this to be pretty surreal and a little creepy. The most obvious reason the statue might be crying is because, well, after all the work this guy went through in the last game, things are just starting over again. People are dying, and the demons have managed to infiltrate a city that should have been prepared for it. The way I ultimately decided to interpret this scene was as a realization that these things will never change. There's always going to be a hero, there's always going to be conflict between law and chaos, and that's just the way it is. Even if things are solved in this world, the existence of future Shin Megami Tensei games shows there are multiple worlds where the conflict repeats itself endlessly. The silent tears, to me, represent the hero coming to grips with the fact that the struggle never truly ends and must be inherent to life on Earth. Preparing to enter the arena, we're told that once again, they've set up a special dungeon match for us, and the games begin. Daleth begins insulting us as soon as we walk in, claiming that we've deceived everyone in the city. With the fate of the world supposedly on his shoulders, Daleth assures us that he will take our life. We'll see about that. The dungeon portion is small, and feels like it might be laid out the exact same way as it was with Red Bear. Search around for some treasure, and once you're done, head to the middle to start the fight. So, Daleth, the anti-messiah, the guy who's been running around the city doing crazy shit and turning the people to his side. The guy whose abilities apparently match ours. You think he's gonna be tough, right? Well, I killed him in one turn. What the hell? After he goes down, he exclaims that he is the true savior, and then gets back up for another round. Okay, so now the real fight starts, right? No. Yet again, he goes down in one turn. I would be really pissed off if I paid to see this fight. This isn't even a fight, it's an embarrassment. After this, he gets up one last time and strikes us with a critical blow, lowering our health significantly. Unfortunately, Beth's response to this is to throw herself in front of Daleth to protect us, which results in her death. Daleth is absolutely furious at this and thinks we intentionally sent Beth towards him as a human shield. Whoa, hey, look, you have it all wrong. I use my demons as meat shields, not people. I have standards, okay? This scene, it just sucks. Narratively, it does make sense why she would do it though. Beth's entire purpose is to protect our life. One of the only things she says in the entire game is that she'll be by our side forever. Even if I do think she was brainwashed into feeling that way, it's just tragic that it had to be against this guy. Gameplay-wise, we definitely could have come back from that hit, but as far as the story goes, this would be the first time that we canonically were near death. Beth fulfilled her role exactly like she was supposed to. I really wish she didn't have to, and I was hoping we'd get to learn more about her, but we can't do anything about it now except continue for her sake. We have to finish the rest of this fight on our own. Be sure to heal immediately. Hopefully you've picked up a bead or two that can be used to restore you to full health. Then, cast a couple of buffs if you can manage it. It ended up being down to just me and Frankie, but we pulled it off and finally put this guy down. As Daleth kneels defeated, you have the option to spare his life or kill him for good. As much as I dislike this guy, I did decide to spare him because I think the real Messiah would show restraint. Beth, mortally wounded, accepts her fate and tells us that she wants Daleth to live. She says that despite how short it was, the time she spent with us made her very happy, and then passes on. Heavily injured, Daleth then stumbles out of the arena, and we're surrounded by members of the audience. Among them is the bishop, who declares that we are indeed the true Messiah. You know, if you think about it for like 3 seconds, this whole charade is kind of fishy. We had that flashback of Daleth in the tube. That means the center knew he existed well before any of this happened. Was it all just a big setup to make us look more legit? Or did Daleth have some other purpose and go rogue? This isn't the last we'll be seeing of him, so hopefully we'll be able to figure it out. After things calm down, some kid hands us a note. It's from Mikata, and he tells us that he needs to explain everything that's been going on. The note says that we can meet him in a room behind the Gaian church in the slums. Head on over and, what do you know, Mikata is the suited man from all those flashbacks. Once employed by the center, this guy is now a wanted fugitive. Mikata admits that we're more powerful than he ever would have thought, and promises to reveal the truth about our past. After we do a favor for him. Naturally. As it turns out, Mikata knows Hiroko and tells us that she's been thrown in jail at the factory. If we can break her out and bring her back here, then we'll get the full story. Well, shit, that's pretty serious. If the center catches wind that the Messiah is responsible for a prison break, who knows what they'll do? Obviously, we're gonna do it, but we'd better be careful. We're gonna need some kind of secret entrance, and such a thing does exist, but it requires us to travel to a place Mikata calls the Underworld. Alright, so here's how you get there. In the tunnels that connect Valhalla to the center, you can find a guy blocking off a door. Ordinarily, he'd turn you away, but this time he'll let you pass, on Mikata's orders. The guy warns that at some point we'll reach 3 password-protected doors, and while he does give you all 3 passwords, he doesn't know in what order you should use them, so there's gonna be a little trial and error involved. Proceed onwards, and head down an elevator that brings you to basement 7. The walls down here are cracked and moldy, and the place feels like it hasn't been touched in years. Just a few steps more, and out of nowhere, Daleth appears, determined to get his revenge. That was fast. He doesn't waste much time with words and gets right down to it. This was an interesting fight because I played it entirely by myself. No demons or anything. Daleth puts up much more resistance this time, and can even heal himself. With a decent gun, or well, having anything summoned, he's perfectly manageable, but I will say, some of his attacks can take you off guard. He must really be pissed. That's the only way to explain how tough he's gotten since we beat his ass a few hours ago. When you bring him down, he says, "Damn it all," and then runs away to fight another day, dropping the Mars pillar as he leaves. Oh boy. I don't even want to look at this thing because now that means I have to find 6 more of them. Ugh. Thanks, Daleth. Pass through another small room and you'll find yourself outside, or rather, underground. I'm sure you saw it coming, but the Underworld is the remains of Tokyo. A huge mess of ruined buildings, crumbled streets, and labyrinthian tunnels. As you wander this deformed wasteland, the earthquakes continue. A short walk from where we emerge, you'll find a shrine housing the Kunitsukami Koto Shidonushi. This happy-looking guy has been turned into a statue, but if you have a D-stone item in your inventory, you can use it to heal him. If you explored around where Daleth was, you should have already found one of these in a chest. If not, go back and get it, or just buy one. As Koto Shidonushi returns to normal, he thanks us and says that he might need some time before he's fully recovered. So pull out that old notebook and write this spot down. We'll have to come back later. I feel like I've been saying that a lot. Note this down, we'll come back later. That's kinda how this game tests you. In some of the earliest Megami Tensei games, there really are quite a few things that can be extremely difficult to figure out without a guide, and it borders on being bullshit. In this game, as long as you write down weird things like this shrine or that guy with a severed head, you'll nearly always be able to find what you need. I'd say there's like one thing in SMT2 that's really stupid in that regard, and for a game from this time, one thing isn't too bad. Don't worry, by the way, I will point it out when we see it. Moving on from the shrine, head past this old baseball field and into the next tunnel. In here, you'll come up to your first password door. The code here is 9192, and this is where our next dungeon starts. In comparison to what we've seen so far, we're working with a pretty big maze. At least they're nice enough to put a healing garage at the start if you need it. After a while, you'll come to another password door. This one is 1213. Oddly, there's a guy in church behind it. You have to wonder if anyone even knows this is in here. Maybe they should like hang an advertisement outside or something? I can't imagine many people visit. An important room you'll need to track down is this one, where you can see a door behind bars. To get through here, you have to enlist the help of this demon Nadja, who's just hanging around pretty deep into the stage. When we find her, she decides she likes us and joins for free, boasting pretty impressive stats. If you explore the whole place, you'll find the final password door, where the code is 1834. Back here is where the Jailkeeper hangs out, a demon called Janus. And I gotta say, this guy is big. That's a pretty huge Janus. Nadja doesn't even think it's worth fighting him and actually won't let us do so, and warps us out of the room. Now, if you want to fight this guy, you can, but you have to do it before you pick up Nadja. Pretty funny. Back at the room with the bars, Nadja teleports us to the other side, and we reach what she refers to as the labor camp. Let's do it. As you dart down the hallways of this prison, you'll pass by several cells, most of which are unoccupied. Eventually, you'll run straight into Zion, who's guarding Hiroko's cell. He refuses to allow us to take her, saying that even if Hiroko broke the rules for a good reason, she still broke them and has to be punished for it. Unfortunately, there's no way out of this without a fight. Zion can dish out moderate damage, but only your weakest demons are in any real danger. With Nadja's healing, the battle is easily won. Zion says we're pretty good, and then changes his mind about the entire situation, saying that he can see where we're coming from. Wait, really? Zion goes on to say that while all rules must be followed, wrong rules must be corrected. Determined, he says that the center has been doing things all wrong, despite their good intentions. Then, Zion says that he won't follow them anymore if they go too far, and tells us to free Hiroko. I can't believe it. This scene seriously blew me away. I'm not kidding. This doesn't happen in video games. When you beat someone in a game, they double down and run away. Like Daleth. I swear I can't think of another game where someone is written like this. When they said Zion was the strongest at the start, they must have meant mentally, as in he's so badass that he challenged our beliefs, lost, and had the strength to accept that and realize that his old way of thinking was far too rigid. In any other game, I'm telling you, it would have taken like 15 more hours or 6 more social links for that to happen. Some may call this bad pacing. I call it fucking awesome. Inside Hiroko's cell, it's clear that she's been drugged or brainwashed because she actively resists being rescued. She just doesn't want to leave, and the only thing that can fix it is Nadja, who asks if Hiroko is our girlfriend before deciding to sacrifice all of her power and seemingly fuse with her. Nadja says that if she's a part of Hiroko, our love will be directed towards both of them. I guess she really liked us, damn. After the two fuse, all of Hiroko's stats increase by 1 permanently, and she rejoins the party. Hiroko doesn't remember anything that happened after being brought to the factory, and says that she feels like her body was being controlled somehow. Very weird. Well, time to head back to Mikata's place. Have fun backtracking all the way there. Yeah, seriously. When we finally get back to the Valhalla tunnel, we come across Zion, who says that Valhalla was swallowed by Demon Lord Abaddon. What? As if that wasn't bad enough, Zion's investigation of the incident suggested that the center was behind it. Zion angrily says that they would stoop to any level to create the 1,000-Year Kingdom. The only thing that can mean is that if we were to learn the truth Mikata knew, it would ruin everything. They destroyed the entire district. Everyone's dead. Okamoto, Madam, just to kill Mikata before we got there? Zion walks off, again determined to do something, and we're left to figure out our next move. If you try to enter Valhalla, you'll find a strange void where it used to be, like existence itself was deleted in this one spot. Our only option really is to head back to the center. As we're about to step out into the main hallway, suddenly Cerberus appears and says that we wouldn't believe what he's just been through. They should have put a laugh track after that. I think it would have fit. For real this time, Cerberus joins up with us, eager to help out after losing his old master. Gotta love this guy, and he's still really strong. At the center, we find the doors are now sealed shut. Well, isn't that just fucking great? Ugh. I guess we can give Holytown a shot. In a weird way, I'm kinda glad this place is okay. After that long prison break, it almost feels kinda comfy. In reality though, things are anything but comfortable. Another news report plays, this one informing everybody that Zion has betrayed the center and is spreading lies throughout the city. Somehow, Zion manages to hijack this broadcast and then delivers an intense speech about the true nature of a 1,000-year kingdom. He reveals that the center wants people to believe this kingdom will be for everyone, whereas the truth is, only a select few will be permitted. The entire city was created to filter out undesirables and select worthy citizens of the world to come. Zion warns that anything the center can't use will be destroyed, and then switches his focus to the factory, flat out saying it's a concentration camp. After the broadcast ends, you're kinda just sitting there like, holy shit, we're in deep now. The atmosphere is really good during these parts. Already, down the street, Zion has raised an army of citizens as he shouts the truth to anyone who can hear it. And again, we're left to ourselves. Where do we even need to go? Well, way back in the Great Church, on the 3rd floor, there was a path that was previously blocked off by a stalker. On your way there, you'll be ambushed again by Daleth. He hits pretty hard, so you will want to use Cerberus here. I had Hiroko get knocked out quite a few times, although we still managed to win. Daleth runs off before the dust even has a chance to settle, and we can continue on. The newly unlocked path leads you to an immensely long elevator that goes down to basement 60, and you better bet your ass that you have to sit through it in real time. So, how's it going? Alright, check this out. A polar bear walks into a bar, and he says to the bartender, "I'll take a gin and..." tonic. And the bartender says, "Why the big pause?" And the polar bear says, "I don't know, I've always had these." When we get to the bottom, we're officially down in this shit. We're incredibly far below the surface, and as a matter of fact, we're standing in a very important spot. A man standing next to a cliff tells us that right here is where the hero of Shin Megami Tensei, along with the Law Hero and Chaos Hero, first appeared in Tokyo. What he's talking about is the moment right after those guys left the Kongo Kai, after the bombs fell. It looks pretty different now, but still, really cool. So, what exactly are we even doing here? Well, we know Daleth must be down here somewhere, but more importantly, if there are more people living down here, maybe we can learn a thing or two about the Underworld and gather more power. Considering how much damage Abaddon was able to cause, we're gonna need it. If you head off to the east, you'll find a bizarre building that has no enemy encounters. On top of that, it has teleporters, and multiple floors with pitfalls that'll drop you down if you step on one. If you have the patience for it, I'd recommend mapping this place out and noting down where the traps are. For now, we can't actually do much here, but we'll be back very soon, and the place will be a bit more annoying. Off to the west is another tunnel entrance, leading to a settlement for various demons and humans that fled the surface. One enemy encounter in here that pops up pretty frequently is against 7 dark elves. On occasion, they'll drop a weapon called the Kodachi of Light. I'm pretty sure you can only use this if you're law-aligned. I was, and it's really good, having a high chance to inflict charm. As you venture deeper, you'll pass by some writing on the wall that claims the upcoming area is ruled by Fairy King Oberon. Sure enough, just as I expected, Daleth has found his way in here too, and this time he has a trick up his sleeve. Instead of just challenging us to a battle, he gets this fairy named Puck to throw magic sap in our face. But he misses, and it hits Hiroko instead. She ends up falling madly in love with Daleth, and then leaves our party, chasing him away. Like, what? Are you kidding me? The old love spell trick? Fuck, what do you think this is, Shrek 2? I know it's from A Midsummer Night's Dream, but whose fucking idea was love sap? Come on. I can't take this guy seriously. What a huge pain in the ass. Okay, so Now, we have to find a way to fix this. As we're getting our bearings, a nice fairy girl named Anoon shyly walks in and explains that the plan was for us to fall in love with her. It obviously didn't work out like that. Anoon admits that she's secretly in love with Daleth anyway, so nobody got what they wanted. Ugh, nice. Well, a bit further in, and you'll discover some shops, as well as the Shinjuku terminal, seemingly overgrown with vines. This very same terminal was in the first game, so it's definitely a weird sight to behold. In one of the rooms nearby, you'll find a little store where Anoon works, and she tells us to speak with Oberon if we want to break the spell on Hiroko. Oberon can be found on the floor below. He's all too familiar with Puck's pranks, and says if we can retrieve some of the sap, the spell can be broken. What we need to do now is return to that empty building with the pitfalls. However, if you explore just a bit more in this area, you can find Daleth trying to push away Hiroko. And he calls her a dirty slut. Like, what are you even talking about, dude? This whole thing, this whole shenanigan. It's all your fault. Like, you have no room to talk, please. Anyway, back at the Eastern Building, there's a new gimmick. Puck is running away from you, and every few steps, you'll catch up to him. Each time, you'll be given the choice to stop chasing him, but you never want to stop until he's finally cornered. The annoying part is Puck likes to throw bombs in your face, which can inflict damage or nail you with a status effect. It happens a lot, so if you map the place out ahead of time, you can get it over with much faster. At the top of the building, Puck finally runs out of places to hide, and you're presented with an alignment choice. The law option is to buy the sap from him for 10,000 Maka. I don't know why you'd do that, that's pretty stupid. The neutral option is to refuse his offer, after which he just gives it to you for free. Then there's the chaos option where you can mug him for no reason. Alrighty then. Take your pick, I went with neutral, and then return to Oberon, who breaks the curse and heals our friend. Back to her senses, Hiroko calls Daleth a pervert, deviant, and a horny bastard. Then, Anoon sneaks up and throws more of the sap onto him, and the two live out the rest of their lives happily ever after. I'm not joking. Daleth straight up gets roofied, and nobody ever fixes it. He moves into Anoon's shop, and that's it. His role in this game is pretty much over. I don't know how you expected things to end with this guy, but I guarantee this wasn't it. I was pretty certain he'd eventually make peace with us, but not like this. Like, at least he's happy? I guess? They really try and play it off like he's turned a new leaf or something too. It's fucked up. This guy is tripping balls on tree sap for the rest of his life. Oh well, enjoy your marriage. I guess that's one problem taken care of. Just past this room, you'll find an exit that leads to another stretch of land. To the east is a huge hole, where a dwarf is digging. If you decide to help him out, you'll dig up the Saturn Pillar, leaving us with 5 more to go. To the west of here are the ruins of Asakasa, which houses a colony of more dwarves and kobolds. A lot of these guys spend their time digging, and tell us that people from the surface on occasion make trips all the way down here to search for artifacts. You can find a blacksmith workshop as well, but he tells you to get the hell out if you're just gonna stand there. There is a purpose to this guy, but only on the neutral route, where he'll make you a special weapon. Overall, Asakasa is kind of a place where we just don't belong. There's not much to do here except move on to the next zone. When you come to the exit, once again, you'll reach a vast wasteland, this one dotted by strange altars. There's one altar for each pillar in the game, so once you have all 7, you'll need to place them all down here. Nearby is an entrance to Roppongi, a large settlement populated by mutants. Right at the entrance, you got a save point, as well as a virtual battler where Steven upgrades the capacity of your comp to be able to hold 9 demons. Try not to miss this, it comes in handy for those late game fusions. After going downstairs, walking across a hallway, and taking an elevator, you'll eventually discover a room way in the back where this tiny guy starts yelling at you to stay away from him. After a few seconds of this, he calms down and realizes he's mistaken us for someone else, telling us his name is Hiruko. Hiruko wants us to help him revive a figure known as Prince Masakado, the guardian deity of Tokyo. While trying to settle an argument between Japan's ancestral gods, Masakado's body was split into 6 pieces, which are now scattered around the underworld. Hiruko explains that the Amatsukami, the gods of heaven, had found themselves pitted against the Kunitsukami, the gods of earth. After the demons invaded the city, the Kunitsukami decided to take advantage of the chaos and attack their heavenly counterparts, hoping to overthrow them and take control of everything. Of course, the Kunitsukami were being manipulated by the demons the entire time, and were subsequently sealed away after Masakado was killed. What we have to do is find a whole bunch of shrines across the map and bring all the parts back here. It's a big ass fetch quest, and in my opinion, the worst part of the game. The plot kinda stalls out around here for a bit, and you're just going around looking for pieces. I'm not a huge fan, so let's just get this shit done. Before heading out, you might want to stock up. There are plenty of places to visit in Roppongi, including... oh jeez. Fucking Rag. He's looking pretty bad these days too. I hope he's alright. At Rag's shop, you can trade gemstones for rare items, as well as demons. Some of the items are alright, but the demon thing, I never used it. I really can't believe I'm about to bring up Majin Tensei again, but it was the same deal there. You have to bring way too many gems just to get a demon that's like, okay. Rag's not too offensive in this game overall. It could be a lot worse, believe me. Now, at the weapons shop, you can pick up some really good alignment-specific firearms. For starters, there's a SPOS 12 shotgun, only usable if you're law aligned. This thing will hit every enemy in the opposing party, and works best against groups. If you're only fighting one demon, it's not quite as good. Neutral heroes get the Barrett M90, a big-ass gun, and if you have a shitload of money, you can buy the Golden Gun, which anyone can use. Highly recommend buying whatever you can afford here. If you want to talk to the village elder before leaving, you can also do that. He's pretty upset about life and says he just wants to feel the sun again one day. Later on, he'll give us an important item, so keep him in mind. Alright, well, here we go. Let the world's most deranged scavenger hunt officially begin. A good place to kick things off is at this shrine off to the west. It's in the top left corner of this area. In here, you have to fight Sadu Tahiko, a leader of the Kunitsukami. This fight was actually really long for me. It went on for like 11 minutes. Sadu Tahiko can cancel out your buffs, heal himself, and does decent damage. Since there's no dungeon to worry about before you face him, you want to come in here at full strength and just unload with your best attacks. If you run into trouble and start losing allies, something to remember is that Cerberus has a revival spell that can bring anyone back to life with full HP. After he goes down, he drops Masakado's left arm, and then you get so much XP it's a little ridiculous. I leveled up 8 times from this fight. That's insane. It's not like we were having trouble before, and we definitely won't now. Next up, check out this shrine right here. It's off to the east of the one we just finished, and you'll have to wrap around some ruined buildings to reach it. This one's actually a dungeon, and it's kind of a tricky bastard. It's filled with one-way doors, as well as teleporters. Make good use of your map, and you might be able to avoid some of the headache. Your goal in here is to find Sukuna Hikona, this really tiny guy who looks like a kid that got lost in Walmart. Sukuna Hikona asks if we'd escort him outside, and then joins the party briefly. I choose to believe that when he joins the team, he just sits in your pocket while you walk around. Backtrack all the way out, and he'll reward you with Masakado's left leg. Now if you thought that stage was sort of annoying, let me show you something even worse. Up near the entrance to Asakasa, close to where that dwarf was digging, you'll find this piece of shit level. This place has invisible walls. It's pretty confusing. This is a rare gimmick too. I don't really remember seeing it in other games. In this stage, we have to find O Yamatsumi, god of the mountains and the sea. Track him down, bring him outside, and he gives you Masakado's right leg. We're making good time here, but it gets worse. Off in the opposite direction, still near Asakasa, you'll find a slip and slide bullshit shrine. This place is just, what's a good word? Egregious? I like that. For those unfamiliar with slip and slide shit, it's where you step inside a room and go flying with no control over your character. The first floor of this place is one big ass slidey room, and I don't like it. The animation of you sliding around takes literally forever, and makes every mistake that much more painful. Sometimes on the footage here, you'll see me spinning around. I'm not doing that, the game is. It's like they want you to throw up. It honestly started to irritate me so much that the guy who keeps me locked in this room playing these games was getting pretty mad too. The upper floors even have pitfalls, which is just cruel if you ask me. At the very least, the boss, Baphomet, is pretty easy. When the fight's over, Onamuchi comes out and gives us Masakado's right arm. So that's both arms and both legs. What else do we need? Well, you guessed it, a body and a head. And I bet you can guess where the head is. All the way back in the great church where that dude has a severed head. Previously, this guy said he wouldn't be able to sell it. But now that he knows we actually want it, he says it's gonna cost 20,000 Maka. Accepting this outrageous offer is the lawful thing to do here. The neutral choice, which I went with, is to negotiate the price, which cuts it down to 10,000. Just like with Puck, the chaos choice is to simply rob the guy. For reasons that I can't quite articulate, there's something about robbing somebody for a severed head that's worse to me than buying it. I don't know, do whatever you want. After I handed over the money, the guy happily said something that sounded pretty crazy out of context, and all we have left is the body. Now, think back, because we already know where the body is. Remember Koto Shiranushi who was turned to stone? Yup, more backtracking. With his strength finally restored, he gives us the torso of Masakado. Bring all this shit back to Hiruko, and he tells us that we now need to fuse the pieces together. Find the nearest Cathedral of Shadows, hand over the parts, and what you get is a revived prince with no soul. Fortunately, Hiruko has this final piece, so at long last, Masakado returns. Hiruko tells the prince that it's all thanks to us, and the two head over to a place called the Sealed Cave. It's just one more dungeon down here in the Underworld, and then we're pretty much in the final act of the game. You can spot the Sealed Cave by looking for this piece of rock that sticks out from the wall. It's near one of the shrines too. Masakado uses his power to open the entrance, then gives us the Sun Pillar as well as his katana as thanks. Afterwards, he leaves to recuperate, and Hiruko asks if we'd free the Amatsukami imprisoned within. A big portion of this dungeon is a series of rooms that consist of one tile. Somewhere in this mess, you'll find a teleporter that takes you to the next floor, but as you go deeper, you'll find several that reset your progress. There are 5 Amatsukami you can find, each held in place by sacred amulets and rope. You got Taji Karao, Omoikane, Tsukiyomi, Takemikazuchi, and last but not least, Amaterasu. Amaterasu tells us that they all got trapped in here after the Kunitsukami decided to follow what she refers to as the gods of the Hebrew pantheon. After the Amatsukami were imprisoned, the Hebrew gods turned on their new friends, hence why all of those shrines were in such a sorry state. Amaterasu vows that this kind of thing will never happen again, and together with Hiruko, they all return to the Kongo Kai to heal their wounds. Now, didn't I tell you that was a long quest? Look, the different gods and bosses you meet are cool, and I like how you're actively bringing the Guardians of the Old City back to life. I just think the execution is a little sloppy. There's too much backtracking and wandering around. I feel like the game had a good structure leading up to this, where you're seeing each district of the city, exciting things are constantly happening, and the mystery of your true purpose is just out of reach. Then you come down here for a while, and as interesting as it is, you start to feel a little disconnected from the events on the surface. Maybe it's intentional, and they wanted you to see how isolating life is down here, where these mutants are hiding away from an enemy that literally buried them. It definitely gives you a lot of reasons to dislike the center, I'll say that. From here, we need to focus on gathering the remaining pillars. We've got 3, that leaves 4 to go. We haven't seen Zion for a while, so let's check in on the revolution. Back in Holy Town, the crowd continues to march, and as we arrive, Zion decides to attack the factory and rescue all of the workers. He invites us to come along with him, and then leads everyone away. Sounds like we've already got our next destination planned, but first, I think now is a good time for us to discover the true purpose of the Disco Club. The story really heats up from here, so while we have a little bit of downtime, let's get this out of the way. Here's the deal. On full moons, the Disco Club hosts a dance contest. The winner of this contest receives a special prize, the Moon Pillar. I don't know what kind of shit a normal person would do with it, maybe put it on their shelf, but we have to get it. To win this contest, your magic stat needs to be at least 10. Like 2 fucking hours ago, when I said the magic stat had one important purpose, this is it. Thankfully, it's not hard to figure this out. One of the dancers in here boasts about her Magic 9 dance, which is a very in-your-face clue that you're gonna need Magic 10 to win the contest. They were being very generous with that hint. Let's say you haven't leveled magic at all. Well, that's fine. You don't need to grind levels. There are an abundance of incense items scattered throughout just about every dungeon. These permanently boost a stat by 1, and there are more than enough magic incenses to pull you through. You can also order the magic fizz drink at the bar, which temporarily boosts your stats. The catch is, the effects of a drink only last until a full moon, and the contest takes place during a full moon. That means you have to buy the drink on a full moon so that it lasts to the next one. Then you have to walk next door and get into the club before the phase changes. This is more difficult than you might think. You have to be efficient with every step you take or you will miss it. Then, finally, your last option is to search for equipment that boosts your magic stat. Whatever you do, once you're ready, the contest starts, and our character proceeds to burn the entire place down with a dance so furious they don't even show you what it looks like. Damn right the Messiah can dance. And that's our 4th pillar in the bag. Now that we just served Holy Town their ass on a silver platter, let's go help out Zion at the factory. Outside of that big fortress, there's a man who says that up in the watchtower, they're broadcasting a song that keeps the people in this area under control. For now, we're still unable to get in, and we need to travel close to where Beetlejuice was. There was a door here that was off limits previously. The entire time, it was another entrance to the prison. There are a lot of people locked away in here, even some kids and a couple of old arena champions. Unfortunately, just like when we rescued Hiroko, nobody wants to leave. And that's when it hits you that we gotta shut down that watchtower. If the song stops, the people should go back to normal. Go up to the sealed gates, and this time, they open, revealing the entrance to the watchtower. Alright, so get this. This dungeon has 13 floors. On the bright side, most of them are pretty small, but you do have to look out for pitfalls. The enemies around this point in the game start to look really menacing too. In here, you've got Messian executioners who wield chainsaws and wear a mask with a smiley face on it. Another great one is the Messian Terminator, this crusader guy who dual wields a shotgun and a rifle. This is one of the best designs in the entire franchise. And you know what? These guys make you feel like you're really against the center now. Maybe the Temple Knights would have arrested you, but these people want to kill you. When you reach the top, you'll find Zion, wounded outside of a door. He says that he barely managed to escape with his life, and that there's an extremely powerful demon inside. Alright, no problem. We can do this. Now, let's use our imaginations for a second. What kind of demon do you think would be guarding this watchtower? This thing really hurt Zion. What could it even be? Well, if you guessed a big purple goblin taking a shit, what the hell is wrong with you? This is Belphegor, and mythologically, it actually does make sense. A quick Google search reveals that he's associated with laziness, so he's in charge of a song that keeps the prisoners complacent. It's just the toilet. How could he win against Zion from that position? I mean, it just boggles the mind. Belphegor can cancel your buffs, and he has the ability to make members of your party happy. Units who are happy do some strange stuff, like return themselves to the comp or waste their turn. If you don't have a way to shut that down, this fight can be slightly annoying. Just try and have at least 2 people with the Patra spell to take care of it. When he's finished, he admires our demon summoning ability and then vanishes, leaving the toilet behind. So what, for the rest of time, there's just a tower here with this sitting at the top? The people who wrote this had to have been laughing their asses off. Alright, so with the big demon taken care of, now we can access a locked cell holding a siren, who's singing a sad song. This song is literally the map music, which is kinda crazy. The factory has its own track, and it only hits you now that somebody's singing it. We can't get her to stop singing, sadly, so now we, what the hell do we do? If you head back to town and swing by the fortune teller, she says we have to travel to the abyss. Okay. Well, there is that summoning room in the Great Church. Those dolls didn't work last time, but if you explore the place again, you'll find another guy who wants to go to the abyss but can't figure it out. This guy has his own doll, the sleeping doll, which he decides to give to us. Go to the summoning room, then use the laughing doll, crying doll, angry doll, and then skip the dancing doll and use the sleeping doll instead. This was the key piece that was missing the entire time. With the right combination, a true portal to the abyss is spawned. Well, here we go. Jump into the portal, and we land in a dark, rocky world, with strange buildings and silos scattered around. Right next to where we start, you can find a man named Peterson, who coincidentally is the Siren's lover. They've been separated for a long time now, so it's safe to assume that if we can reunite them, the singing will stop. Finding this dude was honestly way easier than I imagined. While we could just go straight back to the watchtower, I ended up wandering around the abyss for a minute, and stumbled into what I think may be one of the greatest alignment choices in the entire franchise. Over to the east, as you approach a large red X embedded into the ground, you'll suddenly run into an Arcadia resident, who rapidly flickers in front of you. He's here searching for the secret to immortality. Just past him, you'll run into a spatial distortion, and if you step into it, you're dropped into some kind of hidden facility. In various rooms throughout this place, you'll find Arcadia residents who look almost skeletal, with their brains hooked up to machinery. All of them sit there in a trance, spouting praises about their perfect world. Holy shit. We knew something was going to go wrong with Arcadia, and I guess it was kind of obvious that it might have literally been inside a computer, but I really wasn't expecting that it would end up being some kind of virtual reality life support chamber in hell. While the people sure are happy, it's all just in their heads. They might as well be zombies in real life. And come on, seriously, this is how they test the 1,000-year kingdom? They had to use hell to create heaven. That's deep shit. In the facility's furthest depths, you'll find the true form of Gimel. He's a naked guy with a really cool chair. Gimel is less friendly this time around and says that since we found out the truth behind Arcadia, we're gonna have to die. He asks if it's really so bad to give people a peaceful yet false world, and the fight begins. Mostly, he's gonna use electricity. He also has the ability to reflect physical attacks if he uses Tetrakarn, and magical attacks if he uses Makarakarn. Sometimes his electricity will stun one of your units and make them waste a turn. It's really no fun being on the receiving end of that trick. His absolute best attack can be spotted when the screen says Gimel flips a switch, which does moderate damage and can paralyze you. Once you shut this guy down, the computer announces that Savior Gimel has been eliminated. The computer then asks you to enter the name of the next Savior, and you're presented with 3 choices. You can enter your name, destroy the computer, or just leave. This one's brilliant, seriously, I love it. I can see an actual rationale for all of them. It's a genuinely interesting choice. Maybe you think you could lead the simulation better than Gimel, and tell everyone to chill out with the hero worshipping. Maybe you think this whole thing's an abomination, and we should just pull the plug and put these people stuck in a dream out of their misery. Or maybe it's best to just let the simulation drift and see what happens when nobody guides it. I gave this one some heavy thought. I was really into it. I decided pretty fast that becoming the next savior was off the list. Remember when Gimel said the 1,000-year kingdom would arrive when every place was like Arcadia? Okay, so he wants the whole world to be husk people with their brains hooked up to software that he controls? I don't want to be anywhere near that. It's like inheriting a house where 48 people were murdered in 1 month. Do you really want that kind of thing in your life? And honestly, I think just leaving feels like the worst choice. Like, think about it. You just stumbled in here, killed Gimel and triggered an error in the simulation, and then you just walk out? That's so boring. Come on, live a little bit. If you're gonna learn forbidden knowledge and ruin everything, at least take advantage of it and do something cool. So yeah, I destroyed it, which is naturally the chaos choice. This place is messed up. The entire idea of it is terrible, and the leader was an awful person. He seemed nice before, but he was ready to kill us back there, with no hesitation whatsoever. Do I think it's wrong that I just killed everyone in the simulation? Yes, definitely, but to me, the alternatives were way worse. You want to talk about an artificial dream in Arcadia. Afterwards, I found that I wasn't even in the Abyss anymore. Destroying the system must have cut off the connection somehow, and we end up in a weird little isolated part of Tokyo Millennium that connects back to the center. There were still a few more things we could have done in the Abyss, but no worries because we'll be back pretty soon. Bring Peterson up to the Siren, and she stops singing. The two share a heartfelt reunion, and return to the Abyss together, eternally grateful for our help. Back outside, people seem to be in better spirits than ever before, and we can return to the prison and free everyone. Or should I say, everyone except for Thomas Tank, who actually did want to die in prison. Wow. Something of note that I think is kind of ridiculous is that freeing these prisoners actually gives you a really heavy tilt towards the law alignment. I feel like it's a common courtesy to free these people. Why wouldn't you do it, regardless of your alignment? That means if you're going for a chaos playthrough, the best thing to do is to leave children in jail. It's just bizarre, it feels wrong. Whatever. While you're down here, you might as well drop by the spot where Beetlejuice was. Now you can collect the Jupiter pillar that Worker dug up, leaving us with just 2 to go. Alright, so I think you saw this coming, but the center really didn't like what we just did. They're so desperate to put a stop to things that they personally call out Zion on TV, ordering him to turn himself in immediately. If he refuses, the bishop says they'll suffocate the entire district of Holytown by cutting off the air supply. By the time you get to Holytown, you'll find that Zion has already beaten you there, and tells everyone that he's going to fight the elders and put an end to the 1,000-year kingdom, saying goodbye as he walks off. Shit's about to get real. Before we go over to the center to see what's going down, let me show you where our second to last pillar is. Believe it or not, it's right here in Holytown, and we could have picked this up way earlier. And this is what I consider to be the stupidest thing in the entire game. You want to know how you get the Mercury pillar? You have to go to the junk store, specifically the Holytown junk store, and buy something. After that, the shopkeeper throws it in with your purchase. I swear there are no hints at this. The developers likely thought you'd just buy something here eventually and find it, but come on, the junk store? I basically never go to the junk store because it sells junk. At least it makes sense in universe, you know, a junk collector might have picked up this pillar on the ground, but why just the Holytown junk store? Maybe if it was like any of them, I wouldn't be complaining. Some of you probably found this immediately and think I'm a real dumbass, and you know what? Maybe, but this is the only one where you don't seem to get any hint, and I just don't like it. Thankfully, there's only one left, and we'll get to it in just a bit. Over at the center, the doors have been unsealed, and the place is back open for business. Without giving too much away, we're about to be in the deepest trouble we've been in so far, so really take a minute and make preparations. If you're interested, Steven will toss you an upgrade that lets you appraise items and spells on the fly. Basically, this gives you a description of something if you don't know what it does. The only catch is that it doesn't give you all of the details, otherwise the appraisal shop would serve no purpose. Because God forbid that would happen, am I right? Kind of a boring upgrade, but it does have its moments. If your team is getting stale, like you've been rocking the same demons for the past 3 stages, you definitely want to fuse new ones. Here's a couple recommendations. First up, we've got Ubaluris, I don't know how you fucking say this. He has a lot of HP, and the one I made can buff our attack and defense. I made him with a combination of Pyrojack, Dark Elf, and Dwergar. Another solid addition is Omoikane. This was one of the Amatsukami we freed. After that quest, it's possible to fuse all of them. With this demon, you get a good variety of spells. Mine ended up having Meteorama, a solid party healing spell, and Tetrakarn to reflect physical attacks. If you're really trying to fuse a lot of demons and you need a steady supply of recruits to burn through, there's an item called the Bronze Box that'll help you out with this. I've seen it in dungeons a few times, but the easiest way to get these is at the casino in Roppongi. They're one of the cheapest prizes you can get, and while you can only use it one time before you need another, what it does is spawn a demon of your choice out of what you've encountered so far. Provided your alignment's compatible, it tends to have a pretty high chance of joining you. This thing's busted, so take advantage of it. Alright, I think it's time we get into this for real. The hallways of the center have taken on a far more unwelcoming tone since we were last here. The Messians are more zealous than ever before, and seem to stare you down as they talk about how God is always right. Report to the bishop, and he greets us, only saying that we no longer report to him, and that we need to speak with the elders directly. The bishop gives us one more passcode, 2784, which we can use to get to the 22nd floor where the elders are. If you swing by Hiroko's parents' house again, you'll find that they still repeat that same bit of dialogue about her leaving the center, even though she's right in front of them. Hiroko gets really upset about this, and yeah, it's pretty weird. I wouldn't be surprised if they were just cardboard cutouts with a speaker behind them. To reach the elders, you have to start on the ground floor and look for any stairs going up. Put in the codes as you need them, and keep going until you run into one of the elders out in the hallway. This elder says that the others are misguided, and that they've made a world of domination and control instead of God's kingdom. As he walks away, he just says that this isn't what God wants. Continue just a bit further, and out of nowhere, a familiar face slams down in front of us. It's that wall from the first game. He says that anyone who wishes to pass must hear his words and answer. Around here is where the alignment stuff gets serious. The results of this quiz will likely decide which ending you get. You do still have some room to adjust after this, but time is running out. His first question asks if we'd kill our mother if she was possessed by a demon and wanted to be put out of her misery. Shit, I was thinking maybe we'd start with something like our favorite food. For this, I said yes, I would. I know, it's tough, and that's an awful situation, but if she's explicitly asking you to do it, and in pain, I mean, you have to. It would be so cruel not to. I guess you could argue the demon might be trying to trick you. The way I read it, it's like your mother's final request before the demon takes over entirely. For his next question, he starts by saying that we're a member of the city guard, and we've been given an allowance of 100,000 maka to buy equipment. On our way to the store, we see a throng of starving people, and we have to choose between feeding them or buying equipment. I chose to feed the people. Even if you value new equipment over human lives, do you really think food would cost 100,000 maka? Because medicine costs like 40. Just 40. I bet you could feed like 50 people and still have 95,000 left over. After this, the wall says that we've defeated our hated enemy, who has completely given up and is begging for his life. We're told if we let him go that he'll likely attack us again someday. For this one, I chose to spare him, and it's because they say he's begging for his life. If it were really me, I would give in and let him go. I just know I would. I'd like to believe if this person got beaten so badly that they're crying to be spared, they must be either completely unskilled or extremely unlucky, and I'm just not afraid of an assassin with those adjectives. It's like Daleth. We spared him and look what happened. Oh yeah. After answering this one, the wall shouts out that our soul is truly with God, and that God will surely praise and reward us. And you know what that means. We're on the law route. And you know what? This ended up being one of my favorite routes in the series. Seriously, it's near the top for me, just below Strange Journey Neutral. The game really wants you to play this route too. It's so easy to end up on this path. So many things tilt you towards law, or at the very least, don't tilt you towards chaos. I think it's the most narratively cohesive route in the game, and honestly, any dedicated fan of the series should play it at least once. If you're thinking this route involves siding with the center, you could not be any more wrong. When you're done here, you'll come across Zion, frozen in stone. Kinda like that part in Empire Strikes Back. We can fix him later. For now, you're gonna want to get ready for good old-fashioned boss rush. The elders stand up at the sight of us and scream out that they're going to destroy us, revealing their true forms as, of course, archangels. Are these guys really running the center on God's orders, or should we listen to that fourth elder who walked out? We'll see. First up, we have to go against Raphael and Uriel at the same time. Your first target should be Raphael because he can use Dikaja and remove your buffs. He can also heal, and we just can't have that. The hardest part of this fight is getting him out of the way. If you can pull it off, the rest is simple. Raphael and Uriel are both immune to guns, so if you've been relying on those too heavily, you'll have to adjust your strategy. Even though your buffs have a chance of being removed before Raphael's down, use them anyway, and then wail on them with things like your demon's special skills or simple physical attacks. This fight is a decent step up in challenge. A double boss kinda surprised me, but I'm here for it. With no break, next we have to fight Michael, who's appalled that we actually just killed 2 archangels. He boasts that he's defeated Lucifer himself and then flies toward us. Michael has an assload of HP. He also knows how to use Megiddola on, which can really sting if you don't buff your defense. This is one of those endurance round fights. You need to stay consistent with your damage and stay alive. With time, he will be defeated, and calls out for God to bring down his vengeance upon us. As the fight ends, suddenly, the elder we saw outside enters the room and warns us that it isn't over yet. The entire screen flashes, then pans up, and God appears. Except he's shimmering, almost like a hologram. As strange as this scene may be, God's blue appearance is almost certainly a callback to the way he looked in Megami Tensei II. God says that he will destroy all who oppose his will, and with no further words, the fight starts. Yeah, I know. We just fought 3 angels, and now it's God. And there's no save point? No, there's not. But they heal you before this fight at least. Going up against God is always really exciting. There's a certain gravity to it, not just in-game fighting a powerful enemy. It's the fact that a scene like this is exactly what old people think Pokemon is. I'm not even being funny. If you somehow showed this to adults in the US when it came out, the place would be completely fucking different in the present. I seriously believe if this game made its way over here back in the 90s, I'd be recording this in a monastery right now. The moral panic would have been unbelievable. God can kinda do whatever he wants in this fight. He can use most of the game's elements, he has healing, and he's got this move where he yells at you and someone in your party gets binded. According to guides in the wiki, this attack only works on your party member with the lowest intelligence. It's not even that powerful, really, but it is worth being aware of if you're the one with the lowest intelligence. If you could beat Michael, you can win this fight too, though it is the longest battle so far, and the pressure of losing and having to work your way back here looms over your shoulder. When God's had enough, you level up like 10,000 times, and then his voice echoes out that he'll torture our entire bloodline until the end of time. Nice. After that, only a few seconds pass before the final Elder reveals their true identity as Gabriel, who congratulates us on a job well done. I don't think this is going to come as a shock, but that wasn't God's true form, although it was a decent preview for what's to come. Gabriel says that the other archangels essentially turned Millennium into a slave state. and that their control was so far-reaching that a savior could never be born. The place is just that bad. Since the 1,000-Year Kingdom would never come without a savior, they tried making a savior themselves. This offended God so greatly that he abandoned the other archangels and ordered Gabriel to continue along the true path without them. Holy shit. So, she just said it. We were made rather than born. That's why we had flashbacks of all the main characters in tubes at the start. I think that feeling back at the Colosseum that everything was a setup was more true than I realized. If the center made us, that confirms it. With the exception of Hiroko, we were all just born to play out roles in a real-life narrative to bring about the 1,000-Year Kingdom. The explosion perpetrated by Hinata and Makata, as well as the abyss being opened, really threw that plan off track. If none of that stuff happened, all we would have had to do was beat Daleth, who was made to oppose us. Beth would have been along for the ride, Gimel would have been free to rule over Arcadia, and Zion... well, that remains to be determined. But we'll find out pretty soon. Back at the control room, we find Zion standing alone with no bishop. He says that with the defeat of the elders, there's nobody left to dominate the people. At the same time, that also means there's nobody left to run the place. It's about to be a hell of a first day on the job, trust me. All of a sudden, an emergency warning blares over the intercom and says that a vast energy fluctuation was detected at Holytown. Zion, still injured, asks if we'd go check it out. When you get there, nothing really seems different, at least until you get to the Great Church, and a huge-ass tail flies up through the ground in front of you and starts absorbing everyone's energy. Whose tail is it? Well, according to some guy at the bar, it's Moloch, who lives in the Abyss. Report back, and our new orders are to tear open the jaws to oblivion and investigate this asshole for ourselves. Zion wonders how we'll manage to reach the Abyss now that the Great Church is no longer an option, but we already know. The Pillars. We just need one more. And fortunately, it's pretty much in the same place we're already going anyway. The Venus Pillar, the seventh and final, is found by speaking to the village elder in Roppongi. Why would you ever do this? Well, the last time we spoke to him, he was depressed and said he wanted to see the sun again. Since then, we've revived Masakado and freed the Amatsukami. When we return, he's interested in the so-called tower that appeared on the surface and confirms that it is Moloch's tail. With that, he gives us our final pillar to open a true portal to the Abyss. Alright, so in total that's the Moon, the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. At long last. As you head outside to place them on the altars, you may notice the mountains over here are moving. According to some NPCs, this is part of something called the Kuzuryu, a worm-like dragon creature that, according to its name, must have 9 heads. Shit, no wonder this place gets earthquakes. Once you've placed all 7, a face comes out of the ground and all of the altars connect, forming a hexagram. Just as quickly as it begins, it's already over, as we cross over into the Abyss. This might be the best part of the story for me. I always love seeing how games depict places like this. The Abyss, Hell, Limbo, whatever. The Abyss was also my favorite part of Megami Tensei II, and I'm glad it's something else they carried over and improved on. Just next to where we arrive, we're greeted by an Abyss resident, who welcomes us to the plains of Yesod. They also let us know of a town to the west where we can get supplies. Another guy nearby is taken aback by us, saying that you don't usually see people from Malhut around here. By Malhut, he means the human world. So, yeah, this place is modeled after the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. Now, bear with me a bit for the pronunciations. I looked up some Hebrew speakers saying these, and many of them aren't quite pronounced how I thought they would be. You can see Malhut down there is separated from the rest. That would be the human world in this game, and we just entered into Yesod, with our ultimate goal being Kether, the crown. Pretty neat. That Digital Devil Story game by Telnet did this as well. From here, I somehow missed the town and walked straight into what you could call the Abyssal Highway, a tunnel system known as the Yetzirah Corridor, which connects to Netzach, Tiferet, and Hod. Not far into this place, I then bumped right into Hecate, who says that by Lucifer's orders we shall not pass. She boldly shouts that we'll be powerless against her as long as she has the light of the moon. And she's right. You can't fight her, unless it's a new moon. And then you're faced with a boss who has instant kill spells and paralysis. Great. If you have the spell Tetraja, which blocks death spells for a turn, you'll want to get that up as soon as possible because she can slap your ass sideways with Mudo, and you'll be dead before you know it. If you're unlucky, her paralysis can be a deadly combo that puts any survivors completely out of the fight, ensuring a slow death. The bright side here is that Hecate has very low health, so even if half your team gets wiped, don't give up because you can probably still pull it off. When she goes down, you gain access to a teleporter that'll take you to the other 3 areas. We haven't even really done Yesod yet, so let's start back there first. Outside, you'll find an elf who points us towards Moloch off to the east. The elf says that Moloch is gathering magnetite and burning it within himself as fuel. You can actually go right up to him, but he's massive as you'd expect, and surrounded by what looks like a wall of flames. All you can really do is look. Hopefully there's some way to stop him. Anyway, Yesod's town is off to the west. Most of the services down here look completely different, and funnily enough, some of the shopkeepers are skeletons. The craziest change of all are the healers, which are now replaced with bunny girls and hot tubs. Depending on which alignment the place is, the watercolor changes, so neutral is green, law is blue, and chaos is red. I'd be kinda worried about getting in this green water. I feel like it'd shorten your lifespan by about 10 years. If you want to save here, you have the Terminal Stone, which Steven appears in front of. He knows all about how this thing works and offers to set it up for us. Kinda cool that he can freely access the Abyss. Guess he's not just stuck in virtual reality after all. After you leave and come back, it's ready to use, and you can teleport back to locations in the human world if you want. If you're up for a quick stop, Steven will have another stock upgrade for you at a virtual battle. I really owe this guy. And that's about all there is to Yesod. Back at the Yetzirah corridor, I decided to visit Hode next. After you make your way out of the tunnels, you'll find that Hode is incredibly small, and features only one building, a fortress occupied by Tiamat. She too was warned about us by Lucifer, and tells us she's going to give this fight her full strength. Unfortunately, she completely embarrasses herself. This fight is very easy and goes by in a flash. The only truly dangerous thing she can do is paralyze you. As long as you have a way to deal with that, there's not much to say. When Tiamat is defeated, she drops the Iron Key. Now, from here, we have to go to Netzach. If you try to go to Tiferet, you'll find that it's locked by what else but 2 doors. We just got the key to the first one, the other one's in Netzach. When you arrive, you'll meet a zombie man who talks about how the place is ruled by the great Lord Crowley. As in, the English occultist Aleister Crowley. Wow, a celebrity guest. There's a spot up ahead where you can find yourself now behind Moloch, and there's a town not far from that. I like the way the junk shop looks here. Just imagine going to this dusty ass place. I bet they have some crazy scrolls in here. In one room, a fairy alludes to the idea that Mr. Crowley might have a sex addiction, saying that he constantly wants to hold Sabbaths to summon demons, even though there are demons everywhere in the Abyss. Sure enough, when you find Crowley, he's very upset, saying that Lucifer has forbidden him from holding Sabbaths. He then screams at us that he's so freaking horny. Oh my god, alright man. Apparently, the real-life Aleister Crowley delved into shit like sex magic, which I think makes this even more funny. They're making a complete mockery of this guy who was born in 1875. Crowley channels his lust into rage, and then transforms into the grotesque beast, Master Therion. If you ever look at the actual concept art for this demon, you'll see that it has a big penis. Check it out sometime. The way Crowley acts, and him transforming into a big pink monster, feel a lot like how a South Park parody might go for him. And I gotta say, he must not be that fired up, because you can actually put him to sleep with nerve bullets. When Crowley's beaten, he says that he thought the Abyss would involve more Sabbaths, and then disappears, dropping the Lamed key. Now, we can get into Tiferet. Warp there, make your way through the tunnels, and put in both keys at the gates. We've actually already been here before. This is where we found Peterson in that spatial rift that led to the Arcadia facility. Last time I never did reach the city, so we might as well check it out. This one has shops of all kind, including a disco club where you can meet Michael Jackson? Mr. Thriller here happily says that he doesn't like conflict, but he does like to play. Thanks, that's really useful. At the bar, you'll again find Lucifer. Nice of him to support local businesses like that. He says that he's impressed we came all the way down here with our own power, and then turns away from us. Even in the abyss, he wants to act all mysterious. The next place we need to go is called the Beria Corridor. This leads to Hesed and Gevura. It's pretty close to the city here, but as we approach, we're intercepted by Gamori, a demon who works closely with Lucifer. Gamori says that Lucifer is concerned about us and wishes to meet us at his castle in Kether. We're then warped all the way there with no say in the matter. Long time no see? Lucifer welcomes us, then finally switches out of that costume. He tells us that building Millennium was in direct opposition to God's will. Rather than tear down the city himself, however, he decided to hang back and watch because it was so bad he knew God would take care of it. But, well, we took care of it. We defeated the angels on our own, along with their false image of God, created as a manifestation of the angels' desires. Lucifer asks how we could possibly do this, and wonders aloud if we're actually Satan, God's instrument of punishment. Apparently, that question surprised our character, because once Lucifer sees our face, he knows we're not Satan. He continues, saying that Satan will arrive soon, as evidenced by the awakening of the dragon Set, who was sealed down here until God's judgment was required again, whereupon he would fuse with something else to form Satan. Lucifer insists Satan's arrival will mean the end of all things, the human world and the abyss, and he intends to put a stop to it, potentially with our help. Kicking us out of the castle, Lucifer says if we're worthy of helping him, we'll come back on our own. Before we can even catch our breath, Gabriel then appears and takes us away to another place. This is Eden, where Zion waits for us. He's angry that we heard out Lucifer's plan, and tells us a different version of the story. Zion believes that Lucifer only wants to destroy Millennium and prevent the world from achieving true peace. He admits that the Elders went way too far, but reminds us that at the same time, Millennium's the only reason humanity's still here. After all we've done to help the city, losing it would be terrible. As the conversation draws to a close, Zion asks us to go check out Set while he participates in the construction of this new paradise. When you walk out, you'll find that you're actually back in the center. Eden is the roof of the center, the very tip of the pyramid. Kinda crazy. It sounds like no matter what we want to do, we still have to reach Kether again anyway. Back in Tiferet, you can find Set in a little house right outside of town, being guarded by Gamori. When we walk in, Set just wakes the fuck up and flies through the roof, leaving the abyss. Gamori is monumentally pissed, but I didn't do anything, I just looked at him. I guess that's the power of the Messiah. This time, as you approach the Beria corridor, you're stopped by Astaroth. Can you guys give me a break here? Astaroth can freeze you, shock you, poison you, charm you, and inflict happiness. You're working with the whole range of emotions here. Her physical power isn't much to worry about, so it's kinda just one of those status effect gimmick bosses. As she falls, she begs us to restore her original form, the beautiful goddess Ishtar. And finally, we can make our way to the next area. No, just kidding. Actually, you get sucked into an abyssal asshole, which turns out to be Abaddon's colon. Yeah, the old stomach dungeon. You know what they say, if you can't beat him, go up his ass. This is a truly bizarre stage, filled with tons of small empty rooms. If you're using the minimap, you'll notice it's a little wonky in here and doesn't always show you where the doors are. It just shows each room as an isolated block. You'll eventually find Madam in here stuck to the wall. Unfortunately, this is no happy reunion. Since we last spoke to her, Madam has realized that the only reason the center allowed Valhalla to exist was to filter out people unworthy of the Thousand-Year Kingdom. She wishes that she could have died in place of everyone else, and then finally succumbs to her wounds. Damn. I really liked Madam. I think she's a cool character. Venture ever so slightly deeper, and you'll find that the entire Valhalla slums are inside of Abaddon. The structure and everything looks the exact same. He really did swallow it whole. You know, doesn't this all sound familiar? Yeah, I just played a game not that long ago that was just like this. Ghoul. In Ghoul, there was a monster named Abaddon that swallowed an entire lab whole. Did they get that from Shin Megami Tensei II? You gotta wonder. Anyway, mostly everything is unscathed here. The Gaian church is still running, the map is the same, and Mikata is still here. Naturally, he can't believe we actually got in here. Mikata tells us that Valhalla was destroyed solely to separate us from him, but since we found him anyway, the truth can still be revealed. So here we go. We are an artificial human created by the Center to fulfill the role of savior and bring forth the Thousand-Year Kingdom. We kinda already pieced that together, but what's more is that the angels believed if they created a body, God would provide our soul. Mikata confirms that Beth, Gimel, Daleth, and Zion were in fact created to serve various roles in our life, and that Zion's true purpose is to be our bodyguard. While the other 4 were created through advanced cloning techniques, we actually started as a fertilized human egg, which was implanted into a woman who gave birth to us. After that, the Center accelerated our aging, such that one day was equal to a decade. So, are we like 3 days old? And about that woman who gave birth to us, well, who was the one looking for a missing child? Hiroko is our mother. Oh, shit. So many people implied there was something romantic between us. And it just gets crazier. Why did Mikata sabotage the project? Because Hiroko is his daughter, and he began to hate how she was being used in it. He was able to set us free, but not Hiroko, and we learned that her memories of being a temple knight are all fake too, which is why she didn't know the missing child was hers. That means her weird-ass parents back at the Center might actually be cardboard cutouts. After all that, Mikata says he has only moments to live, and that Valhalla will soon be gone. He hands us a mag presser that can be used to attack Abaddon's heart, and tells us to get the hell out of here before it's too late. Alright, Grandpa, will do. Do I have to listen to what Hiroko says now since she's my mom? Ugh. When you reach Abaddon's heart, he tells us his body is a dimensional rift with no true form, so we can't kill him. Little does he know that we have some special gadget specifically made to kill him, and so the heart appears. This thing's kinda gross, I really don't like it. Everything in here's covered in holes, it's just nauseating. Abaddon can actually buff himself and debuff you. His health is decently high, but doesn't quite reach the same heights as Michael or the False God. Bring along Dikaja to clear any buffs he uses, keep your attacks consistent, and you'll make it through. After the place is damaged beyond repair, Abaddon realizes we're the one who defeated Michael, and tells us he was manipulated by Michael into swallowing Valhalla. It seems they had a deal that if Abaddon would do this favor for the Center, his angelic form would be restored. Clearly they never followed through. Classic shit. And now, finally, I think, we can go to the Bariat corridor. Probably. No, like seriously, is anyone else gonna stop me this time? Let's just get it over with. No? Okay. The Bariat corridor is a confusing mess of dark rooms and a shitload of staircases. You'll want to look for the stairs that bring you to Hesed. It's going to take some brute force trial and error to figure it out, but you'll know you made it if you emerge in this valley that leads over to a temple. Hesed Temple is a Buddhist institution where lost souls are welcomed. The master of the temple, someone named Dainichi Nyorai, accepts anyone, regardless of their past, which leads us to encounter some pretty intriguing characters. Like, for example, Ozawa, from the first Shin Megami Tensei. This is the guy the Chaos Hero wanted to kill. Ozawa says that when he ruled over Shinjuku, it was a beautiful place, at least until some bastard summoner and his friends came along and ruined it. His thugs from Kichijoji Mall are here too, and tell a different story, pissed off that following Ozawa just got them killed. This is a deep-cut cameo. I didn't think I'd see these guys ever again. Even Goto is here, along with some random Masaians and Gaians who died over the years, as well as our old rival Red Bear. And Beth. I'm honestly so happy to see Beth, and she's happy to see us, relieved that we aren't dead. With the last remaining bits of her spiritual energy, she raises all of our stats by 1, and then disappears, sadly saying that we will never see her again. At least she can finally pass on with hope that we can create a peaceful new world. Before leaving, if you're up for it, you can challenge Dainichi Nyorai, who also goes by Virokana. Angry at our intrusion, he assumes we're soldiers of God and attacks. Kinda like with Gimel, this is one of those situations where everybody would have been better off if I just never walked in here, but it's too late now, we already did it, and you do want to beat every boss in the game, right? Virokana is a strong opponent who brings along Megiddola On and Holy Wrath, which deals 1/4 of your total HP as damage. That's the biggest thing you want to watch out for, although fortunately it's not very common, at least it wasn't for me. Virokana also boasts a variety of powerful physical attacks, making this a boss that you want to be fully prepared for. I relied heavily on a vampire during this fight, spamming one of his special attacks every round. I don't really know why either, I just happened to have him. Combined with Frankie, who was still hanging around as my emotional support demon, our team was starting to look like a kindergarten Halloween party. If you can beat this boss, you level up several more times and earn the ability to fuse him. Nice. Alright, we are really closing in on the end of the game now. It kinda flies by from here, so strap in. Return to the Beria corridor, and this time enter Givura. This entire sector has been taken over by Grand General Atavaka and the 12 Shinshos. That's an incredible band name just right there for the taking. The general and his crew are blocking off the entrance to the Atzilut corridor, so we do in fact have to kill all of them. For the most part, they're a complete joke. I'm not going to go into too much detail here because, seriously, you will not have any trouble unless you are absurdly underleveled. After entering the building they've occupied, you just have to make your way through and destroy anyone in your path. You start off with Vikarala, who's dead simple. Then it's Ketura, who's even easier. After that, you've got Shindura, who tries to poison you, and Makura, who heals himself very often but can be killed in 2 turns. Pajira's whole gimmick is that he sucks fucking ass and does nothing. Indara isn't much better, although Sandira switches things up a little bit by being immune to standard attacks. Majira completely ate shit and we blew his head off, I'm serious. I shot him, it did 500 damage, and he died immediately. Ouch. Then you've got Andira, who's a rabbit. I didn't even look at the screen during this fight. There's not much to worry about with Mihira either, except for the part where he decided to kill Hiroko in 1 hit. Next up is Vajra, who's like, I don't know, a cow holding a monkey wrench? Alright, to be serious for a second, that thing in his hand is actually the Vajra in question, a legendary club-like weapon seen in both Buddhism and Hinduism. It's supposedly an object of immense power, but in this game it doesn't really feel that way. Nearing the end of this whole charade, we've got Kumbira, who let the class gerbil out. This Alvin and the Chipmunks reject barely puts up a fight. And finally, at long last, Atavaka. They saved all the challenge for this final battle. The general here has so many different attacks. He can seal you and bind you, he can instantly kill you with Madoon and Mahama, and his standard attacks hit pretty hard. I was doing well for a while, but slowly he kept killing us off, and eventually it was only Hiroko. While I still managed to win, it was pretty close. Well played. With his army in shambles, Atavaka bitterly says that he's been shamed, and we're free to advance to the Atsilud corridor. Are you really telling me nobody else here in the Abyss could have done that? Okay, sure, Atavaka was tough, but the others? Please. I really think if the villagers got together and put their minds to it, they could have pulled it off. Passing through the Atsilud corridor, we reach the Sea of Bina, where demons are born. This part of the Abyss doesn't have much going on. We're pretty deep in, and the only thing the town here really offers is a chance to revive Ishtar, provided you've fused Astaroth. You can also learn about a piece of clothing called Fury's Robe, which is enchanted with illusion magic that hides your alignment. This is a critical item for the neutral and chaos routes, but with the way the law route goes, you never end up needing it. If you want to know where it is, you have to comb the beach outside until you find Fury, a woman who is currently bathing. To get the robe, you steal it. I'm a little surprised Hiroko has nothing to say about that. I think at this point, we're just rolling with the punches. To wrap things up and get to Lucifer's castle, we're forced to return to the depths of the Atsilud corridor and find an entrance to Hokma. Hokma is a creepy place. The mountains here take an orangish red color, and the only object of interest is this big blue tower. Oh god, wait. Blue? Tower? Is this fucking Daedalus? I swear to god, if there's a Minotaur in here, I will be so mad. Apparently, this is a residential building, as evidenced by the people skulking around who seem to live here. And guess what? There's no Minotaur, but there is a big green penis at the top. This is Mara, everyone's favorite demon. Mara offers us immense wealth and power, saying if we're smart, we'll just take it. But it's obviously a trick, and we're gonna have to beat this thing off if we want to get through. This fight is perverted on so many levels. Every attack you use is suddenly recontextualized because you're fighting a huge penis. Like, do I really want to tell my vampire to go over and bite this thing? To give you an idea of Mara's attacks, one of them says Mara swings its tail. It does seem to have some tentacles in the back, but no, this can only mean you're getting cock-slapped. Another says Mara went for the throat, which, wow, that's different. And then, to top it all off, sometimes you'll see a move described as breathing white smoke. You just can't. You can't say that. White smoke? Give me a break. When you finish off Mara, you're presented with the option to proceed forward to Lucifer's castle. Unfortunately, it's a short-lived visit because the talking gate won't let us in. It essentially says that Lucifer wouldn't like us because of our alignment. What a dick. You don't know what I've been through to get here, and besides, he told me to come back. I guess we did wake up that dragon and ensure Satan's arrival. Well, if Lucifer's abandoned us, then it looks like we'll just have to force our way inside. After this, it's time to make your final preparations. Head back to the center and work on creating the best party you can manage. I spent around an hour fusing things and came up with a pretty stacked team. Usually in these games, you'll want the Hinokagetsushi's sword for the final act. I didn't get that this time because I think it's neutral only, but I did get the Demon Hinokagetsuchi, which is pretty cool too. I also fused the Angel Ragel, who has a skill called Judgment. Much like that move Virokana had back at the temple, this reduces the enemy's health by 1/4. Another demon who has an ability like this is Anubis, and while it has a steep MP cost, it's well worth having in your pocket as a secret weapon. To track down Zion, we have to make our way up to Eden, starting at the bottom floor. A guy in the bar provides you with 3 digits to one last password-locked door, leaving you to figure out the last number when you get there. The final code ends up being 3470. As we arrive at the front gates to Eden, we're welcomed by cherubim, who say that the doors are always open for us. Against all expectations, the people chosen to live in Eden are normal, and seem to genuinely deserve a good life. The workers from the factory are here, as well as elderly citizens, temple knights who recognize the mistakes of the elders, and citizens from Holy Town who were neglected before. The only off-putting thing here is that these people agreed to sacrifice their knowledge to live in the coming world. I'm assuming this is taken to mean they'll have no memory of anything that's been going on. Not that they'll literally be mindless, or else what was the point of overthrowing the elders? I don't know, I feel like it's not a bad outcome. Look, there are no zealots up here anywhere. These are all people who have suffered and voluntarily want to forget what they've been through and just start over. You could say Arcadia was kinda like that, but it wasn't even a real place, and the people here would never have been given a chance there. On top of being dead in reality, the people of Arcadia were vain and greedy, like that dickhead arena champion, or the citizen searching for immortality. Zion and Gabriel brought basically everyone who was excluded before to this new kingdom, and left the extremists downstairs to do whatever. I think it has potential, although we have yet to see why Lucifer would say this involves the planet's destruction. When we meet up with Zion, he tells us that he finally understands his true purpose. He then raises his arms and declares that he will return to his true form as Set descends and fuses with him. In just an instant, Zion has become Satan, God's chosen bringer of retribution. And as our bodyguard, he joins our party, eager to bring divine vengeance upon Demon Lord Lucifer. I don't think I even have to say it, but Satan is absurdly strong. If you took the time to set up a good party, he makes the perfect addition. You're nearly unstoppable at this point. And with that, it's time for the final dungeon, Lucifer's Castle. Return one last time to the gates, and Satan effortlessly opens them, almost laughing at Lucifer's attempt to hold us off. As we blast forth into the palace, fighting our way down the hallways, it becomes clear that this is the most complicated maze so far. I think we've been a little spoiled though. As far as bullshit goes, this game certainly has it, but it hasn't been that bad. This is a solid final dungeon. It takes some time, but it's nothing that'll make you want to punch through your monitor. As strange as this might sound, I found this place to be kinda comfortable. There's just something about it. These dim, almost crystalline corridors, and the triumphant, upbeat music. The place looks foreboding, but it's as though the soundtrack is reassuring you that you've got this under control. Explore the entire castle very carefully, and you may find Beelzebub, who says we aren't worthy of being killed by Lucifer, switching into his fly form and attacking us. This is actually a totally optional fight, but it's well worth completing for the amount of experience it grants. Not to mention, the sprite art here is pretty awesome. If you have a demon capable of using it, nail him with Judgment to immediately cut off a fourth of his health. This does over 1,000 damage and gives you a good head start into his deep pools of health. Beelzebub's a pretty dangerous guy. He loves using Madoon to score easy kills, and can actually curse you, which turns you into a fly. No joke. As you'd imagine, this greatly reduces your combat effectiveness. Get your attack buffs set up fast, because Satan deals high damage and attacks 2 times in a single turn. At the absolute highest possible stack of attack buffing, he can easily do over 500 damage per turn without a sweat. The only loss I took during this fight was Hino Kagetsuchi, and the truth is, I murdered him. Seriously. Hino Kagetsuchi has a special move called Explode, so I used it, and he fucking exploded and died. It dealt no damage to Beelzebub whatsoever. And you know what? When the fight was over, he was gone. The proof is right here. I recorded this shit. He blew himself up and died permanently. That is hardcore. It's gotta be some kind of glitch, but I'm gonna pretend it was intentional. As you reach the 9th floor of Lucifer's castle, you'll meet Lucifuge. So this is the guy that makes all the money. Lucifuge briefly introduces himself, then runs off to warn Lucifer after detecting our power. Lucifer's room is just ahead, and oddly, we're just allowed in, no fighting or anything. Well, not yet. Lucifer starts by mocking Satan, asking him if someone so holy should be helping sinful humans. Furious, Satan demands to know why Lucifer would defy God's will. He responds by saying that if God's will is to wipe the earth clean and repopulate it with mindless sheep, he has no choice but to defy it. Lucifer shouts out that he'll prove the only reason we're still alive is because he permitted it, And the fight starts as he takes his iconic demon form. Honestly, what he's saying seems reasonable, but I was kind of under the impression things would be different under Gabriel's rule. Everyone that was in Eden was selected, sure, but they ultimately chose to be there. And who said anything about wiping the Earth clean? We just went on a huge adventure to kill a monster that wiped out one part of a city. Deep down, you know there must be some truth to his words. It's just hard to reconcile that with all the work we've been doing to mostly improve the world. Well, there's no going back now. Lucifer's got fire and ice spells, he's immune to guns, and he's got a really annoying special move that can charm your party. Have at least 2 party members with group healing spells if you can, as well as a steady supply of Quinton items to keep their MP high. Once you've got Satan sufficiently buffed, you can start to shift some of your other party members to focus on support. Keep this up for 9 or 10 turns, and you'll be rewarded with another huge experience drop, likely pushing your health towards the upper limits. Defeated, Lucifer says there's nothing left to stop our plans, and tells Satan that he must be happy. Lucifer promises that we'll see just how mistaken we are very shortly, and says to never forget that everything that happens will be our fault, then disappears. As he dies, the ground quakes, and Satan realizes the Kuzuryu has awoken, Lucifer's parting gift, if you will. We saw this thing all the way back in the Underworld near Roppongi. All of a sudden, we see it burst through the ground on Earth, and it flies straight upwards until it slams into the bottom of Millennium. Satan teleports us back to Eden immediately, desperate to fight off the creature. He asks if we're alright, then explains that we're in the control room, which, along with Eden, is part of a larger structure called the Arc. The Kuzuryu then breaches the city, and Satan fires up the Arc, desperate to escape with the chosen citizens of Eden. Surely we're not just going to leave everyone else down there to die, right? Well, no, that's not quite what happens. As we enter Earth's orbit, Satan announces that those who ride the Ark are the chosen few who will live in the new world. And then, oh boy, okay. Then, Satan tells us that a secondary function of the ship is to bring about a true cataclysmic destruction of the Earth. What? But, bro, what about all that stuff we did? All the fun adventures, saving people? He even said earlier that losing the city would be a mistake. I knew Zion's character shifted a bit after becoming Satan, but that much? It can't be right. He goes on to say that humanity's sin runs too deep, and the planet has fallen into ruin because of it. Even if those left behind were allowed to survive and rebuild, the knowledge given to them by Lucifer would only cause them to repeat their sins. This doesn't sound like our old friend at all, but he is still in there. Check this out. As Satan declares that he shall exact this horrible judgment onto humanity, he says that he does so on the orders of the true God. This isn't Satan's decision. He's subordinate to God, and specifically described as a tool to execute his will. He has no choice but to do this, but as you'll see, his old personality still burns bright. Satan shouts out that the time to erase wickedness from the earth has come, and slowly, the station begins turning towards our old home. As the planet pans into view, you have just enough time to consider the fact that the true God might be even worse than the mockery created by the angels. As the weapon fires, the entire population is annihilated in a single instant. Congratulating Satan on a job well done, God invites us to enter into his countenance. You're suddenly placed in a hallway in a space of pure darkness. Praising our efforts as we approach, he reveals himself to us as a big yellow head. The fake one was pretty damn close. God declares that we're worthy saviors and repeatedly welcomes us into his countenance, saying that we've paved the way for the glory of a world filled with his thralls. But then, Satan interrupts him, saying that his judgment is not yet complete. The realization that Zion had all the way back in the prison, that bad rules must be corrected, it never went away. And while he did have to execute God's wrath, nobody ever said God himself was exempt from it. Boldly, Satan announces that the last one to be judged for the grave sin of genocide is his own creator. God becomes insanely furious, saying that he'll scorch us with divine lightning and drop us into the fiery pits of hell. And the final battle is underway. Now, what Satan decided to do was pretty crazy, right? He's such a cool character, but there is something I think is important to know about his dialogue. As thankful as I am for this English patch, it does take some creative liberties at times. Don't get me wrong, by and large, it's a good translation. There are just a couple points I think are worth discussing. Satan specifically calls God one that has committed the grave sin of genocide in the translation. The original text only has Satan say that the final one to be judged is God, his creator. So why did they add in the whole genocide bit? I assume for dramatic effect, but in trying to be more dramatic, I actually think it does the opposite. The way I see it, Satan mentioning the genocide implies it was the final straw for him, that God had finally gone too far and now needed to be dealt with. The original seems to imply that perhaps even before the order to fire the Ark was given, Satan felt God deserved to be judged. Destroying the planet was just one more thing on a long list of atrocities, and it was clear to him for quite some time that God would not be permitted in the world to come. In my opinion, the act being premeditated for so long makes the moment much more intense, as if Satan had been waiting all this time for Judgment Day to finally come. Ultimately, I don't think this change will really matter to most people. If you're heavily invested in the story, however, it does change Satan's character a bit. Jumping into the fight itself, well, it's been playing all this time, so it's pretty long. The longest in the game, by far. God has around 17,000 health, which is fucked up. Naturally, he's also got strong attacks and high defense, and this time, his voice can inflict instant death instead of just freezing you. This fight can really test how good you are at recovering from a disaster. It's very likely that you'll suffer losses, so you'll need to be fast with reviving and keeping everyone's health topped off. As the battle rages on, God also makes some really strange faces, occasionally opening his mouth very wide. The way he acts is downright bizarre. It makes you wonder if he's entirely lost his mind. Oh, and get this, he completely screws up the damage values in combat. If you're buffing your attack, as you should be, and then he clears it, your damage could be sent to the single digits or the absolute highest it can go. Remember way back when we talked mechanics and I mentioned that you can buff yourself so much you go off the scale and wrap back around into being shitty? Well, it seems to work in reverse too. So if your damage output totally sucks and then he debuffs you, I swear it can loop back around into the triple digits. This happened to me a few times to the point where I really had no idea what the hell was going on. It was like the whole system was off the rails. Ever since Hino Kagetsuchi died in that accident, it feels like the game's been barely holding itself together. I must have messed something up back there. As this desperate battle finally comes to an end, God laments being judged and punished by his own creations. He insists that mankind cannot live without him, and that for as long as people seek his salvation, he will return, time and time again. Afterwards, Gabriel greets us, saying that it's finally all over. While she was a servant of God, that God is no more, and as a result, she has no purpose left in this universe. As Gabriel urges us to go to Eden, it seems that from here on, the fate of the world will be in our hands. When we arrive at Eden, Satan says the chosen residents are waiting for us to lead them, and explains that with his purpose also fulfilled, he will now return to the soil from which he was created. As Satan disappears, he bids us farewell, referring to us as the true savior, and Hiroko as the new Holy Mother. Hiroko turns toward us, ready to build an ideal world from what remains, and the Ark returns to Earth. From here, we're shown a montage of the game's events playing out in reverse order, all the way back to the birth of the main characters. And that's the end of the game. I think this ending's incredible. Maybe not the best possible outcome, but an amazingly entertaining story that's really interesting to think about. A law route focused around revolution and reform, and the idea that living under someone else's rule can be a positive thing, as long as the ones in charge are held fully accountable for their actions. Satan following along with God's psychotic violence, but then judging him accordingly right after and dethroning him, is one of the most memorable things I've seen in a game. In many Megami Tensei games, I've found the law path to be entirely unagreeable. I think Shin Megami Tensei II does quite well with it, and gives you a roller coaster of events that seem to end off with a hopeful outlook for the future, despite the immeasurable cost of attaining it. Now, before we take a look at the post-game, because of course there's a post-game, let's talk a bit about the other endings, just to compare. On the Chaos route, you end up siding with Lucifer, who launches an attack on Eden to stop God's plans. We learn that the Kuzuryu is actually a weapon of mass destruction created by God, and that Lucifer was supposed to awaken all 9 of its heads to destroy the Earth on his orders. Lucifer refuses and only wakes up 1, which slams into Millennium. During your assault, you have to defeat 3 of God's avatars, Sabot, Shaddai, and Elohim. These guys are really strange and have some of the most surreal designs I've ever seen. You also face off against Zion, who transforms into Satan after saying that his soul was the only one out of all the main characters to come from the true God. This is what Mikata truly meant by saying that Zion was the strongest of all. He has the most powerful soul. Since we directly oppose him on this route, he has no choice but to judge and punish us, and seems very upset about doing so, which makes me pretty sad. When all is said and done on this route, you're left with a world entirely free from the control of God and the Center. Although the violence on Earth will likely continue, demons and the citizens of the Underworld will no longer be villainized, and the mutants can finally return to the surface. Lucifer shouts out that in this new world, nobody will suffer under the domination of another, and overall, it's another ending with a decently positive outlook. Although the workers and the good-hearted people of the Center are denied the heaven that would come to be in the law path, and the Earth remains in shambles, at least the planet's population is saved, and nobody can tell us what to do next. Just like that genocide line in the law path, however, there are some translation matters to think about here. I've seen this said by multiple people over the years. Essentially, the patch gives the Chaos route a more noble tone than what the original script may have intended. An example is actually something I just said. In the translation, Lucifer calls out for us to enter a world where nobody will suffer under anyone's domination. In the original text, he's a bit less dramatic and tells us to go forth into a world where nobody is in control. While it is a small difference, you could make the argument that the patch portrays Lucifer as more caring towards humanity, whereas in the Japanese original, his words just embody chaos and express a desire to simply do away with any sort of structure. Then, finally, we have the neutral ending. This is honestly my least favorite. I just think it's a little plain in comparison to the other two. On this route, well, you kill everybody. Using Masakado's katana to gain entrance to Lucifer's castle, you defeat him, and then the Kuzuryu gets released. This time, Steven brings you to it, and you have to beat it all by yourself. God also gets especially angry on this route, and says that we'll be tortured in hell and then reincarnated endlessly into lives of torment. This line spawned the theory that the character Hijiri in Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne is meant to be a reborn version of this game's protagonist, damned to live through another apocalypse. Whether you believe that or not is up to you. When the fighting is over, literally nobody is left to assert their influence, and the people are free from the whims of law and chaos. Hiroko, who's eager to see the world rebuilt with human hands, finds comfort in having us with her, and that's it. This ending is fine. I just personally think the other two give you far more to think about. As always, I highly encourage you to give this game a playthrough yourself and come to your own conclusions. While I did just talk about it for a really long time, there are still plenty of things to discover for yourself. And now, let's check out the post-game. The post-game of Shin Megami Tensei II is a little bit unusual. There's no super boss or anything like that. Instead, you gain access to a handful of new stages where you can find the game's best equipment, as well as a fiend spawner. To get started, first, after the credits roll, reset your console. After you've done this, the new stages will be unlocked. Load a save from your last playthrough, and then head towards the spot in the Underworld where the 3 heroes arrived in Tokyo. It's close to that elevator that took us down to basement 60. This is where they came out of the Kongokai, and now it's how we're gonna get in. Just talk to the guy standing here, and holy shit, we're back. It seriously looks almost the exact same. Kinda makes you realize how bland some of the dungeons looked in the first game. That old bastard Enno Ozuno is still here too. Thankfully, this time he doesn't ask for 2 cups of water. Instead, he just welcomes us to make ourselves at home. Let's start with the extra stages. I'm sorry to say it, they're kinda lame. Each one is alignment specific, so really, only one of them's gonna be open to you at a time. And on top of that, the doors have stat requirements to open, and some are stupid shit like magic or luck. If you can get inside, you'll go through a bare bones, short level, and find your alignment's most overpowered gear. For the law route, it's called Jesus armor. That's cool and all, but I already beat the game, so what's the point? Look, if you want to replay the last third of the game with better armor, go ahead. That's fucked up, but I won't tell anybody. It wouldn't even be useful if you were trying to get another ending, because if you somehow did switch your alignment, then you couldn't use the equipment. Honestly, fuck the side stages. The Kongokai itself is where the action's at. Behind the luck skill check door, which requires a staggering 25 luck by the way, is the Fiend spawner. All throughout the game, there are random tiles and dungeons that have a 1 in 256 chance to spawn a Fiend when you step on them. Fiends are special demons, many of them iconic to the series, like Matador. Finding one naturally is pretty rare. They even existed in the first game, and I never saw them there either. The spawner here finally gives you a high chance to see one. It's just a room that you walk into. Sometimes a fiend appears, sometimes it doesn't, but the odds are very good. In this game, there are 5 fiends total. Some you might recognize, like Alice, Matador, and Hellbiker. The others, you're gonna be like, what the fuck is this? Ghost Q? And the Sage of Time? Each of these fiends has their own rare item drop, so if you're dying to keep playing, there's some incentive. And I think that's about it for Shin Megami Tensei II. On to the ports, and then we're out of here. While Shin Megami Tensei II did make its way to a handful of consoles, it pales in comparison to the first game, which seemed to be released on just about everything in existence. As of the time this video was uploaded, there are no translation patches for any of the releases I'm about to mention. First up, we've got the PlayStation version. I guess this is more like a remake than a port. The 3D environments are truly 3D now, and they honestly look great. Navigating dungeons feels way more smooth now too. If you want the game to be on the harder side, this version has an expert difficulty, which is pretty awesome. And finally, they redid the soundtrack. I'm kinda mixed on it. Some songs sound better, others I think are worse. Assuming you can read it, or don't mind just messing around, it's a solid way to play the game. Then we've got the Game Boy Advance. I'm not a huge fan. I wasn't that big on the GBA version of the first game either. It's a squished down version of the PlayStation release. It looks like complete ass, and I know, it's a handheld game, but it would have looked 5,000 times better if they just used the Super Famicom version. The soundtrack is also much worse in comparison to the others, although that makes sense. But the one saving grace that this release tries to get you with are the visionary items. As you progress through the story, you can unlock new cutscenes that greatly expand on characters and key events. These things are really good too. Talking about all of them could be its own video, but to give a few highlights, one scene takes place in Zion's mind when he was frozen outside of the Elder's room. A voice speaks to him, asking if he was born in the name of God. When Zion seems to agree, the voice says that by definition, whatever he does is God's will, and tells him that God is not good, God is everything, and he can become another of God's faces. The voice urges Zion on, saying that he is the ultimate temple knight, destined to obey God's command and carry out the appropriate judgment and punishment. That's cool shit! Another scene establishes that this game's Cerberus is the same one from the first game. And yet another dives into the ultimate fate of the original hero. It seems that he worked closely with Madam to expand Valhalla, but died in a cave collapse. Alfred, the butler, looks back fondly on his memories with the hero, saying that he would have never put up with the center, and likely would have come to blows with him eventually. See, these are neat, so there really is a good reason to play the Game Boy version, despite it having no translation, worse graphics, and the worst soundtrack. There's actually a great video you can find on here that shows all of these scenes with translated subtitles. I strongly recommend giving it a look. And finally, the hardest version to get a hold of, the iOS version. The first game's iOS release came to the West, but not this. From what I understand, it's just the Game Boy Advance release again anyway. For a first playthrough, I'm always going to recommend the Super Famicom. The graphics are timeless, the soundtrack is amazing, you really can't go wrong. This was one long video, but I had to do it. Shin Megami Tensei II is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I really wanted to try and do it justice. I'd easily place this game near the top of the franchise. While it does have its balancing problems and some parts of the Underworld could have been improved, everything else is great. If you were to only play one classic Shin Megami Tensei game in your life, I'd say it should be this. This has been the Shin Megami Tensei II experience. Thanks for watching, and if you made it all the way through, I really appreciate it. You have no idea. As always, I'll see you guys in the next video.